and encouraging state and federal legislation. The Trump administration has tried unsuccessfully to impose a moratorium on states enacting any kind of AI safety rules. For NPR News, I'm Rachel Myrow.
On Wall Street, stocks have turned negative. The Dow is down 50 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A highly contagious stomach virus is rearing its ugly head throughout the country, including here in Massachusetts. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, infants and children are the most susceptible to what is called rotavirus. It causes fever, severe stomach cramps, with lots of vomiting and diarrhea, which can also lead to severe dehydration. Health officials say data collected from wastewater in Boston and Millbury show high levels of rotavirus. They also say it spreads very easily, especially among young children. The rise in cases comes at a time when health officials debate policy recommendations for vaccinations. Earlier this year, federal health officials removed the rotavirus vaccine from its list of childhood immunization schedules. In Fall River, a grassroots political action committee has set the wheels in motion for a recall election for Mayor Paul Coogan. Mass Live reports the move is in response to, or lack thereof, Coogan's handling of several recent controversies. The PAC, known as the Committee to Recall Mayor Paul Coogan, says it has enough signatures to move forward. At issue is Coogan's handling of snow removal during the February blizzard and allegations that Coogan filed a complaint against the Fall River School Committee without notifying them. A third complaint is that Coogan allegedly tried to block the Fall River City Council's police oversight efforts. He says an internal investigation into that police matter found nothing wrong. Busy day in sports. Celtics, Bruins, Red Sox, all in action. 43 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions. Learn more at fjc.org.
Listen to BPR and GBH and NEPM, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are not at the Boston Public Library because they're still cleaning up after the marathon, but we will be back there tomorrow. We are, however, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. John Gruber, Carol Rose, and more will be with us at the library tomorrow, April 28th. We have a double header, Jim, also at the library. Governor Maura Healey will be with us from 11 till noon, and Boston Mayor Michelle Wu will be with us from noon to 1. And one more thing, May 1st, that's May Day, by the way, we're going to have a special show co-hosted by Ken Casey of the Dropkick Murphys and a star-studded cast.
All selected by him, by the way.
I know, all selected by him. That's right. We didn't have to worry about it.
How are you?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
So another week and more chaos in Trump world where the spiraling continues. Trump's latest 2-week Iran war deadline, this is on the ceasefire, looms, though it doesn't seem any progress is being made. The MAGA world's basket of deplorable influencers who once heralded his rise are giving up the ghost. We're talking the worst of the worst here. Marjorie Taylor Greene is questioning whether the assassination attempt in Butler was a hoax. Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and yet another Trump cabinet official is out. By the way, all the ones that are out happen to be women due to misconduct, not just by her, but by her whole family. Her husband, and her father.
Who's got to be, she's 58, he's got to be at least 78 or 80.
But he's still going strong.
Going strong
we'll
after
tell you
the
about it in a
young
minute.
women in the office.
So we're starting today's show with a question we think about a lot, maybe daily since 2016. Is this the beginning of the end for Trump? Call or text at 877-301-8970. He's using the ceasefire with Iran to threaten overwhelming military force, including another war crime threat, taking down every bridge and power plant if they don't come to an agreement to end the war tonight or tomorrow. Doesn't really seem like a ceasefire, more like an ultimatum. And the ever-confused Tucker Carlson, we'll play you some sound in a minute, is apologizing for supporting Trump's presidential runs at all, saying he's going to be, this is his word, tormented by that decision for a long time. So As we love to ask, are the wheels finally falling off the Trump train? Or are we just as delusional as we were in 2016 when Marjorie used to come in every day and say, he's violated the emoluments clause. It's over.
I know.
It's over.
I was so naive. I mean, that's a constitutional issue, but who cares?
877-301-897. Oops, I also forgot Marjorie's favorite story of the day, which is that the credibly accused by the Atlantic, almost always drunk Kash Patel at the FBI, spending time in Las Vegas's Poodle Room. We now know everything about the Poodle Room at 877-301-8097. Now, let me just say this.
Can we start with Kash?
No. Somebody says, or is it Brian McGrory? Someone, I can't remember who it is. Somebody always says to us, hey, Jim, on the air, you think this is always going to be the end of Donald Trump. Can I tell you why I think this is going to be the end of Donald Trump?
Why do you think it's going to be the end of Donald Trump?
We're only a few months away from the midterms.
Yep.
And if the accumulation of all this bad news for him continues to have the impact it appears to be, we'll speak to John King at noon, and he not only loses the House, but maybe loses the Senate, that means two things. One, he can't pass any legislation that is not sane. And two, what the Democrats are going to do is hold hearings into all the inappropriate, unconstitutional behavior. So I actually think we are on the way. Not there yet, because he's got a few more months till the midterms, to the beginning of the end of the worst of Donald Trump. Do you agree? She only wants to start at the Poodle Room. She doesn't. She says, "Who knows?"
Well,
what is the Poodle Room?
Before we get to the Poodle Room, I think in general, it's bad when your coworkers have to go out and pay and have the expense of breaching equipment.
Explain what that is.
Because you apparently are so smashed or passed out or out of it that they can't get into the room when there's an emergency situation
wake up.
where the head of the FBI's gone out and got breaching equipment so they can wake up Kash.
He's not getting breaching equipment. They need breaching
That's
equipment because the head of the FBI is passed out drunk, according to the Atlantic.
That's what I said. And he hangs out at the Poodle Room. Now, we looked up the Poodle Room.
We did.
First of all, you think to yourself, the history of the FBI.
Yeah.
Some of you may be too young to remember Robert Stack as Elliot Ness on The Untouchables. Yeah. Maybe you remember Kevin Costner playing Elliot Ness in the great movie The Untouchables with Sean Connery, former James Bond. Can you imagine Elliot Ness or Robert Mueller or Christopher
Do you remember
Ray?
the scene when Kevin Costner turns to Sean Connery and says, I'll meet you in the Poodle Room at 9? It's on the 89th floor of the Fontainebleau. We looked it up this morning in Las Vegas. $20,000 membership. And apparently, Kash Patel spends his weekends there. Even though, we have to say in fairness, he is suing the Atlantic for $250 million. Yeah. Unfortunately, he was too drunk to sign the papers. So I'm not sure if the lawsuit's been filed yet.
And then we have the head of the Labor Department, the former head of the Labor Department. Yeah, she's gone, Lori Chavez de Remmer. Now, apparently, it's not just Lori. Lori, was having an affair, I guess, from somebody on her staff. But she
security guard.
Security guard. She was asking for rosé all day from the staff, and when they couldn't find rosé all day, she asked about the Josh Sauvignon Blanc. She asked for that to be brought to her. But it's not just her and drinking on the job. It's her husband and her father. I didn't know about the father until this weekend.
The husband was allegedly groping staff at the Labor Department, so he was barred from his wife's own office.
Yes, after one of the women filed a report with the Washington Metropolitan Police Department about his alleged sexual assault. But we didn't know about the father. Apparently, she told the staff to keep tabs, to make sure they accommodated her husband and her father. And here's the father, who has to be at least 78 or 80. Apparently, he was writing things to young female staff members like, hearing you're in town, wishing you would let me know. I could have made some excuse to get out and show you around. Please keep this private. And then when one of the staffers figured they better respond to the labor secretary's orders and keep in touch with him, he responded back. No, that was the husband, actually, that responded back. But he responded back that he wanted to get together with this young staff member. And then the husband was saying things to these young staff members like, when are you leaving? And where are you staying? And when she updated him on that, the husband said, you better get in touch. I was feeling forgotten. I figured you were still in church, repenting after your exposure to the demon state of Oregon.
By the way, do you know where her father and husband were texting from? Poodle Room.
Poodle Room.
877-301-89. This is going to be very hard to have a discussion about whether this is the beginning end of Trump because of Marjorie's obsession with the poodle
Well, you
room.
just can't make this stuff up.
No. By the way, this story begins. Was it Sarah Fitzgerald's the name of the woman who wrote the Atlantic story? It's a great story. It opens with him in total panic because he can't he can't get online at the FBI, and he's convinced that the reason he can't get online is because Trump has fired him. And then only after he talks to his coworkers does he find out it's a technical glitch. 9 people confirmed that, according to Sarah Fitzgerald. The breaching equipment to get to him because he had passed out drunk, allegedly, in his room or his house or whatever
they
it is.
worry that he's a threat to public safety, vulnerable
How
to
about
foreign
national
coercion,
security?
violated DOJ ethic rules, unreachable in emergencies, and has required the deployment of quote-unquote breaching equipment to extract him from locked rooms.
Okay, get enough of the poodle room. Can I just say one more thing before we get to the calls?
What?
In addition to reading the Kash Patel story in The Atlantic, you also have to read a brilliant piece by Josh Dawsey, formerly of the Washington Post, and Annie Linsky, formerly of the Globe and the Washington Post, both of whom are now at the Wall Street Journal, about Trump and the war. And among the damning things is reporting that his aides kept him out of the key rooms where they were getting updates on the second pilot who was down before he was rescued for fear that he would blow it with a Truth Social post or something like that. They decide to keep the president of the United States out because he can't be relied upon or trusted in these situations. The number is 877-301-8970. Are we being naive or overly hopeful that it may be the beginning of the end for Donald Trump finally? What do you think? Where do you want to go?
Let's go to Zach in Springfield. Hi, Zach.
Hey, Zach, welcome.
Hi, Marjorie. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
I'd like to hope that it's the beginning of the end, but I don't think we really know until the midterms because, quite simply, there's no functioning Congress to really oppose him or conduct oversight.
True.
You might have Tillis and Massey occasionally calling him out on some actions, like with the Fed chair in Tillis's case. But until we get a new Congress, Trump is going to be able to act with impunity on the big things that matter, be it the likely to resume conflict in Iran. If, God forbid, a Supreme Court vacancy opens up in these next several months, or really even past that next election, if the Republicans hold the Senate, then there's a concern there. His political star's fading, and I'm sure that when we get to the next election, some people might try to spin off a different sort of America First brand that is like some variation on it, like Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to do now. But I think Trump just has a big hold on the party, and as a result, Congress is scared of him.
Well, listen, I agree. It's without a flip in the midterms, it doesn't amount to anything. All I was suggesting, and I can't disagree with you, Zach, is all of the behavior of Trump is almost inevitably, and I almost hesitate to say that, leading to Republican losses in November. We'll see. Zach, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. And we should say about Tom Tillis, it's not just today, for example, at the hearing on Warsh, Trump's nominee to head the Fed, who, by the way, used to be an inflation hawk.
Right.
And is totally flipped. Why is he flipped? Because Trump wants interest rates lowered, despite what inflation is. So the guy's done a 180 to be endorsed by Trump. To be nominated. And we should say, while Tillis deserves a lot of praise, he's a Republican senator that was just mentioned by Zach, he is not running for re-election, which is when he got a backbone, essentially, which is rather sad.
It is kind of a sad situation.
But Massey is running for re-election. He and Ro Khanna were the two people most responsible for at least some of the Epstein files being released, and Trump is having people run against him really hard. There's a guy who's willing to sacrifice his career on principle, and you have to admire that.
That's
877-301-8970. And by the way, let me repeat, the only cabinet officers who've been forced out, all women. Is that shocking to you?
Well, Walsh was pushed out, kind of. Remember at the beginning?
He's got another job. He's the UN ambassador. He wasn't pushed out.
Bondi and at least Noam got some made-up job in the government, but Bondi and the labor secretary are going into the quote-unquote private sector, which means he didn't arrange a job for them.
Right, and he's got two people who have obviously really serious drinking problems in addition to everything else. I assume Patel is in some risk. We'll ask John King. Hegseth is at risk depending on what happens in the war, don't you think?
Well, I think that's what's going to happen. I think Trump is going to blame Hegseth for what happened in Iran, and then he'll get rid of Hegseth.
Do you hear what he said on CNBC this morning? Despite this Iran fiasco, he could have ended Vietnam and Iraq, quote, very quickly. This is what he said. I mean, it's just...
Well, he keeps saying all these things that Iran has agreed to, which apparently they haven't.
Well, that's what threw the whole thing off kilter.
And it's what is the point of that? I know you're
because
you're
he's the most brilliant negotiator in the history of the world, Margaret.
Five-dimensional.
And he also
chess
suffers
and
from
all that.
mental illness.
But that's the only thing you think. Why would you say something like they've agreed? They're going to give up all their uranium.
Because he's out of his mind.
And that's a little unnerving.
Oh, you think so?
Isn't it?
John in Marblehead, welcome to the show. Hi.
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 First, I want to apologize. About 2 years ago, I predicted vehemently that Trump would never win, and I was as wrong as can be.
Yeah, me too.
Your apology accepted, sort of. Go ahead, next.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The reason I feel that Trump and the Republicans and Democrats aren't moving is because nobody wants J.D. Vance as president. And once he gets thrown out, unless we control the Congress, the next step is Johnson. So I don't think anything can happen until we hit the midterm and hopefully can control Congress.
Well, can I tell you something? The one difference, despite the fact that Vance is sycophantically supporting the war, which he opposed throughout his career and apparently opposed even in a meeting with Trump, but obviously said he'd follow his lead if he went ahead. I don't think you'd have any more Irans under Vance as interim. Well, he'd be president, at least for a short period of time. So I hear you, but I'd take him. Hey, John, thank you for the call. 877-301-8970. Anonymous texter irresponsibly asks, what's a poodle room? Sort of like Jim's red sex room. Jim's red room, that'd be me, is not a sex room. It is a red room.
That's what Jim says anyway.
In which I zoom into the show from time to time.
Another texter says, the poodle room? I had no idea Patel was in Best in Show, one of our favorite movies. And by the way, you know, when in the writing now about Viktor Orban, there's been a lot about the corruption that went on there, where all his buddies were making tons of money. His son-in-law was making massive amounts of money, became a billionaire. John Ossoff, who's running for Senate again in Georgia, he was talking about this, that Trump's son-in-law, essentially Jared Kushner, the guy who's negotiating supposedly an end to this war, is on the Saudi payroll for $2 billion, a reference to the $2 billion of Saudi sovereign wealth fund controlled by the prince over there, has invested in his firm. So it's a weird thing because the Saudis want the war to continue,
a very good point.
But he's over there, Jared, is negotiating for the war to end. So it seems like kind of a conflict. And they also talk about it's not just Jared. A company owned in part by Eric and Don Jr. has been pitching Gulf kingdoms on its drone interceptors during this war. Plus, Pete Hegseth's broker looked to buy defense funds before the Iran attack, which is an allegation of insider trading. So they're talking about the corruption, too, of Iran with Jared and the Saudis and the two sons and the family all getting wealthy on this whole situation.
I'm shocked by that. Here's Matt and Winthrop texting. As JFK famously said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do in the poodle room.
Well,
that was an amazing.
You showed us a video of a beautiful young woman dancing in the women's room at the poodle room, where they have this unbelievable view, and she was dancing in a very
89th floor.
89th floor. And isn't there a lot of poodle decor? I'm not sure what that means. The little fluff balls that they have on their ankles. Is that what the poodle room decor is about?
All the servers have poodle hair all over them. They do. That's apparently a fetish thing.
And the
with poodle
wait
room.
staff, they're dressed up as poodles.
Poodles, they are.
You know how poodles, when they're all done, they got the big, they have the big balls on their ankles and their ears and their tails.
You know what the servers do, by the way? They lift their leg when they have to pee.
They lift their
just
leg.
to keep in the spirit of the thing.
Do you think Robert Mueller, the late Robert Mueller,
spent a lot of time
went
at
to
the poodle room?
I
By the
don't
way,
think so.
for those, I'm really disappointed that some people are not defending Patel against this. As some of you who believe that the mainstream media, people at places like the Atlantic, all you got to do is watch the video of him after the Olympic thing, chugging beer in the locker room, drunk out of his mind. I mean, it's just insane.
Well, obviously, it's tough to have a drinking problem, but you can't have the head of the FBI with a serious drinking problem.
Right, it's a huge
breaching
national
equipment.
security risk.
I guess I don't even know what that means. Does that mean they have to blast him out of the room or break down the door? Or come in
Break
with
down the door. That's
crowbars?
what breaching equipment is.
So the FBI, his underlings, many of whom he's fired, by the way, are so worried about getting in contact with him that they have to get like crowbars to blast through the door to wake the guy up in case there's an emergency.
What does breaching equipment mean?
Yeah, they can't call him on the phone.
No,
I guess
we
he won't
can't answer the phone. No, he's drooled on the phone, and he
he's
can't.
been too long in the poodle
I don't know
room.
if you're allowed. By the way, you can't take photos in the poodle room. So that woman had to go in
that's
the women's
right.
room and do the video
That's
out
why
the window.
she did the video. That is an excellent point.
Thank you.
I think Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez used to hang around there too. It's a big.
Is that true?
It's a big spot for the clitorati.
Didn't you tell? Oh, Affleck, you told me that this
Yes.
morning. That's right. Kate in Concord. Hey.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call. And
course.
more importantly, thank you for being here every day to inform us and keep us sane.
You're very nice
more or
to
less.
say that. Thanks. What's up, Kate?
Really appreciate it. Don't want to talk about the poodle room, sorry.
It's okay,
I do
Marjorie
want
will
to
handle
talk
it.
about your hopeful feeling about the election.
Yeah.
And I totally concur with you that all the signs are that they will lose power in terms of the voting. But I do have two things I'd love for you to speak to. And one is that the likelihood that it'll be a free and fair election, and that includes the counting of the votes, not just the placing of the votes. And secondly, and this is what keeps me awake at night, how would they possibly let this power slip from them? Because they know what's coming. So why wouldn't they muster every bit of power they have to keep from losing it?
Well, Marjorie should answer your question. Your fear is one that you talk about almost every day.
Yeah, I am afraid that they're going to have that they are going to somehow rig the election. But you know what I'm heartened by? I'm heartened, but I shouldn't draw too many comparisons, I guess. But they do the same thing in Hungary. I mean, it's almost the step-by-step authoritarian takeover, and some would argue Trump's ahead of where Orban was. They couldn't manage to do it. You know why? Because everybody came out to vote.
Well, it was also a landslide.
80% of
Isn't
people.
Chuck Todd the one who said
It's
to
gotta be
you,
a
if it's
landslide.
close, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And democracy's in trouble. If it's not close, Trump can't rig it.
Yep.
Kate, stay in touch, and thanks for your thoughts, because we share your concerns about the midterms. 87. By the way, Carol Rose we should talk to about tomorrow, too, about what the Civil Liberties Union is doing preemptively to try to ensure that the midterms are not stolen by Trump at all.
Somebody just texted, and I can't find it, but the essence was that drinking in the poodle room has got nothing on the head of HHS, RFK Jr., who snorted cocaine from a toilet seat.
That's a very good point. By the way, he says that. So, he said that. We're
he
not
snorted.
accusing
I think in general, if you snorted cocaine from a toilet seat in one of the down and out moments in your life, you probably would keep that to yourself.
By the way,
when
I
you are.
also researched that because PolitiFact didn't do it. Very, very few former heads of HHS have snorted cocaine from toilets. I'd say you could count them on one hand. So it's unusual. I think we
my
could agree
God.
to do that.
Let's go to.
Anonymous texter says, J. Edgar Hoover, didn't he hang out at the poodle room?
He probably,
No, he probably did. Well, he hung
Yeah.
out in other rooms.
Yes, he was hanging out in other rooms. What was that place that the Republicans used to go to that was
Oh, they still
everybody
do,
dressed up in tutus?
In Northern California. The
Did pas
begins with a
d'oeuvre?
B. What's it called?
I don't know.
It's like, what is it called? They dance out in the wilderness. It's what's that thing called in Northern California where the
We have to look it
Republicans
up.
go? Begins with a B. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
that's not very
Take another
helpful.
quick call. We only have a minute.
Okay, Rob in Beverly. Do you want to go to the poodle room, Rob in Beverly? What do you think?
No, thanks. I think it's Burning Man, too.
No, it's
in
not.
Northern California.
Could be, but not. Go ahead.
Anyway, I grew up in the New York area. We all knew Trump was a phony for years, and it's no surprise to us. But my survival technique for getting through all this is lately I've been binging The West Wing to see what a normal
yeah.
administration looks and sounds like. And I just came across an episode this morning
20
in
seconds.
the third season, episode number 19,
Yeah.
where they interviewed a wide variety of bipartisan presidents and staffers who were just phenomenal. And there's a great quote in there from Karl Rove about trust, how trust is so important to the administration.
What episode is that?
Recommend
what episode?
Third,
season
3, episode 19.
We got it. By the way, it's called Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. Look it up.
Check it out.
You want to see the ballet steps of some famous politicians and important people. Anyway, we are out of time. Thanks so much for your calls and texts. And here's to the Poodle Room. Coming up after this quick break, Trenni Casey joins us with the latest in sports. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR and GBH and NAPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Alison Hoagland joins us as the legal fight over President Trump's White House ballroom tests more than taste. Hoagland, a board member of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, helped win the injunction that briefly stopped construction. She'll discuss the lawsuit, the symbolism of the White House, and whether any president gets to refashion the People's House as his own. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Umbrella Arts Center in Concord, Massachusetts, presenting the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Hairspray, April 24th through May 17th. Tickets at theumbrellaarts.org. And the Museum of Fine Arts, presenting Framing Nature, Gardens, and Imagination. This new exhibition of beloved and never-before-seen treasures centers gardens across time, place, and cultures. More at mfa.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're back at the library tomorrow. Carol Rose from the Civil Liberties Union is with us. John Gruber is going to talk about 20 years of Romney Care here in Massachusetts, which he helped craft. And we have the governor and the mayor both with us on a week from today on the 28th. And Ken Casey of the Dropkicks will co-host with us on Friday, May 1st. Joined now live on Zoom by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Welcome, Trenni.
Oh, Trenni's muted.
Hiya, Trenni.
Hi, Trenni. So big day.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. A big day at the Boston Marathon yesterday. Your takeaways, your analysis. You marathoner, you.
Oh my gosh, it was such a great day. And you know what? I know it was a little chilly for spectators, but it actually wasn't too bad. Like, it was warm in the sun and it was perfect conditions. And we were at this great spot. We were at this little, this awesome, if you love Spanish food, by the way, we're at this place called Taberno de Jaro, which is like right on the Brookline.
Yeah.
Yes, right
I've
on the
been there a million
Boston
times.
line.
It's one of my favorites.
So we were like right in front of there watching. And so when everybody came through, they crossed into Boston. So it was where the big banners that said Boston. And it was like everybody got energy because they knew they were close to the end and they were entering Boston. And we saw, I mean, you guys, the leader was running like a 4-minute, 20-second pace when he came by us. And it looked like John Courier looked like he was running like an 11-minute mile. I mean, just effortless and unbelievable. The highlight of the day for us who love running, Des Linden, who of course won in 2018, she ran past us and she just did this insane race in Morocco. It was like a week-long ultra marathon. I don't even know how many hundreds of miles it was. She came in third, and then she went out yesterday and ran like a pretty respectable, I don't even know what, I didn't look at her.
2:35, I think.
There you go, 2:35. Like I couldn't run a 2:35, though like I could run a 2:35 half. It's such a great day. We were out there long enough to see, I think the BAA's decision to give, to make it 6 waves was really nice because it didn't get really crowded at any point. So you could actually like spot people and find them. The course record was smashed by the male winner.
By like 2 minutes, right?
2:01.
I mean, that is
a minute,
huge.
no, 1 minute, 3 seconds.
It was
that's
incredible.
huge. I mean,
that's huge. I mean, that's massive. It just was, again, just a really awesome day. And it's funny, I didn't even know until Zoe sent me the list of the stories yesterday that, I guess I'd kind of forgotten that now big events are probably under more scrutiny than they were before because of the conflict, the war in Iran. And I did notice an uptick. I thought, wow, there's a lot more police and military out than there usually is. But like, it didn't, never dampen the spirits. Like everybody, it just is it's the best day in the city, and the runners were awesome. And it's just, again, it's just such a great day of resilience and dedication and hard work. And I just love it so much. And the American women, I mean, listen, I don't know when an American woman is going to win the Boston Marathon again, because the Africans are just so unbelievably talented. But Jess McLean, top American woman yesterday, she actually was in when she passed us. So they probably had about a mile and like 1.4 miles to go when they passed us. I think she was sitting in like 6th or 7th, and she ended up finishing top 5.
Oh, good
Emily
for her.
Sisson
Good for
came up
her.
and ended up in the top 10. So just a really great day for American women as well.
Well, we should also mention this Who guy won the men's
Marcel
wheelchair
Krieg,
for,
yes.
for the 9th time. And I think her name is
Unbelievable, right?
Rainbow Cooper. The
Yes,
women's
Emma.
wheelchair won for the 2nd time. So there were a lot of major moments yesterday. And I thought it was a beautiful day and a great
they
day
had
for
the
running.
like they've had before, the big trucks at the intersections. They had one. I was close to you in Brookline where they had the
blocking
blocking the road,
Yeah,
so
so that
no
you
cars could drive
you
through and try
drive
to
on,
run
yeah.
people
Well,
over.
that's been since the bombing. Obviously, they've been doing that kind of thing. Yeah.
But it was comforting to see them, to know you'd be safe there.
You know, one other thing I wanted to mention amid all the raves about how great the race was, you know, Nike, the store, has taken a lot of heat.
Stupid Nike.
Well, it was stupid, but I have to, their sign, if you didn't see it, runners welcome, walkers tolerate. A lot of people were upset. I have to say, as soon as the complaints happened, and I agree with the complaints, they took it down and apologized and said they screwed up. I mean, what are they supposed to be, like, tortured forever?
No.
They made a mistake and they said, we shouldn't have done it. We apologize.
No, I listen, they did. They took it down right away. They didn't come up with some stupid reasoning for why and try to like explain their way out of it. So on that side, they did the right thing. But I just want to know, and I think we're going to talk about this Diana Rossini, Mike Vrabel story as well, but like, hey, crisis communicators, you know, global marketers out there, you want to run something by me so you don't look like a complete dip? You know what? I'm available for, you know, I will start my own consulting business.
Well,
I
it's
feel
like
I
the
can make
women's
a lot of money.
soccer.
It's
Remember
like,
the women's soccer team?
yes, like I don't understand how people get in a room and are like, you know what's a good idea?
Yeah.
Shaming people who have to sometimes do like a run walk method.
I agree.
Like what? Like who is running these marketing and PR plans for people and crisis communications? Like I'm ready for hire. Anybody out there who wants my ideas on things, because then I can tell you what is going to get you talked on the radio and television for all the wrong reasons, you morons.
By the way, GBH broke that story. I think it was Megan Smith.
Oh,
I'm not
great
sure.
job.
Yeah, good for Megan Smith. I mean, that was really. Do we say exactly what it said?
Yeah, I did. I read it.
Yeah, it said a runner's welcome, walkers tolerate.
Yeah.
Can we talk
Which
about the
is
next
just
big event here?
Stupid.
World Cup is coming, we know, in a couple of months. And we learned last week that the train, because there are only 5,000 parking spaces as opposed to the usual 20,000 at Gillette, the train's going to cost $80. I think in New York it's going to cost $150.
$150,
and
yeah.
we learned, lo and behold, my hometown of Philadelphia, you know how much a return train is going to cost?
It's going to be nothing.
Free,
Nothing.
and going out there is like $2.90. Why can they do that and we can't?
I would love to know. Honestly, it does not make any sense to me. Like, I don't know if the city budgets are different. Like, is it partially because, like, I have never taken the subway or the train in Philadelphia, but if my memory serves, it's not as I mean, listen, I know that, like, the T has a lot of issues, but you can get a lot of places on the T and on the commuter line here. I don't believe that Philadelphia has the same robust train system,
I don't know.
commuting system. Like, I don't feel like you go there and people are like, oh, it's really easy to, I don't even know what it's called in Philadelphia. So I wonder if, like, they don't need the money. Like, they don't, like, there's not going to be that many people who take it anyway.
I
and
bet
there's
it's
much more
subsidies.
parking.
I bet you they're, I don't know, and we'll check into it. We should have done more checking before this conversation, but before we talk to the governor and Mayor Wu next Tuesday, I'm assuming their government entities were
I mean, it
more
always comes
supportive,
down to
and private
money,
sector stuff. Here they're having trouble raising money because of tall ships and the 250th. and all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. In any
I mean, that's why
case,
Boston Calling isn't happening this year. The big,
is that
the
why?
big music. Yes, because they said they put out a release I want to say right after last year's concert that they were not going to have a Boston Calling
But why?
this year because they could not get sponsorship in the same way they did before because of Tall
I
Ships,
see, I see.
250th, and the World Cup. So like getting corporations to buy into things and put money towards big events right now is really hard to come by in Boston.
We're talking to Trenni Casey.
So, Trenni, we know the NFL is not going to investigate Patriots coach Mike Vrabel.
Which I do not understand, by the way.
How do you say his name?
Vrabel.
Vrabel? Yeah, Mike Vrabel.
For his alleged affair with a former reporter, she's now resigned, with the New York Times Athletic, Diana Rossini. But I didn't know about the involvement of New England Patriots owner Bob Kraft. What's the story?
Yeah, so apparently, now keep in mind, this is In Touch magazine that is reporting this, and then it's going farther and wider. But like, I don't know, these gossip magazines usually have pretty good, like TMZ is actually a pretty good source on things. Apparently, Robert Kraft tried to put an end to it, tried to keep these pictures from coming out when they were brought to the attention of both Mike Vrabel and Diana Rossini. It is less clear when these pictures came to light for Vrabel, like when they reached out to him. But in the case of Rossini, the New York Post, because she lives in Bergen County, New Jersey, which is, of course, close to New York City, the New York Post reporter actually went to her home on Easter Sunday to show her the photos, tell her what they were going to do, and ask her questions. Yeah, so there was a really great, if you have a chance to read it, a really great in-depth piece that ESPN released last Friday, digging more into this. And she had an opportunity, both to the New York Post as well as her employer, The Athletic, to provide, I guess, proof that the story she was telling, that she was there on a hiking trip with 6 friends. She just happened to run into Mike Vrabel. It was nothing more than a casual encounter, that, she's a hugger type of thing, that it wasn't what it seemed. She had opportunities to provide something that held up her end of the story, and the New York Post wouldn't have run the story, but she could not do that for the Post, and she could not do that for her employer, The Athletic.
Can I talk about the NFL thing for? And by the way, I just checked. Unless you know otherwise, while you said this is only an In Touch, we don't know. I haven't seen any denial from Kraft that he didn't attempt to interfere either with Rupert Murdoch or anybody else. The thing that's troubling to me, by the way, we've said this before, and I'll say it again. An affair is an affair. That's their business. That's their family's business. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the impact on their work of doing this. That's why Rossini quit. I think she quit ahead of probably of being fired. They said there were 6 other people there that couldn't never produce the evidence. Here's a line from the NFL, whatever it is, guidebook. Conduct detrimental to the integrity and public confidence in the NFL. There's stories that Rossini wrote that had confidential sources where the meetings about which she wrote were attended by Mike Vrabel. Now, I have no idea if he's the source, but it seems to me the NFL would want to investigate, is he the source of things that would constitute conduct detrimental to the integrity and public confidence in the NFL? The fact that she had to quit and he is getting away like nothing ever is incredible to me.
So listen, he is in a different position. So
of course,
his job is never going to be in jeopardy, right? Like, it does not impact his ability, to the best of our knowledge. It's not going to impact his ability to be a coach, right? Like, on his side, this is more of I made a bad decision. He's going to have to address his team. I mean, everybody seems to think he's going to have to address his team. He's going to have to address us at some point.
Doesn't he have to speak during? Isn't the draft this week?
Well, the draft is Thursday, Jim. It's going to be really interesting.
Let me just
to see what they do.
One thing, I don't think it would be treated the same way if he were a woman. I don't know if a woman coach could be skating by like he.
No,
can.
But let me just say, there's no question their jobs have their different. Responsibilities.
But she violated ethics of her job.
But his conduct may have been detrimental to the integrity and public confidence in the NFL. And unless you do an investigation, maybe you'll say it wasn't detrimental. How can they decide we don't even need an investigation?
I know. I think it is interesting because who knows? Like, I think the only thing I can think of, Jim, and I rarely stand up for the NFL. The Athletic is going through in their continued investigation of all of her stories to now sort of, I think, try and figure out, was her information bad? Was it misleading? I mean, I don't think you can argue that she gave favorable coverage to Vrabel.
But let me repeat, but she did report on meetings that were closed NFL meetings where Vrabel was in attendance.
Right.
Maybe
and that's
he's
what,
the
and
source.
that's, I mean, that to me, like, I don't know why he has not even had, like, but I mean, I shouldn't say his feet have been held to the fire by local media. I mean, I don't know how much you listen to sports talk radio, but people have been saying now for 2 weeks, like, you have to say something. You can't just cower in the corner. And I hope on Thursday that reporters go down there and they ask question after question after question after question about what happened here and don't talk about the draft. And I think I know what he'll say. He will say, I'm focused on the draft. The thinking is about, from the people who are around the team much more often than I am, is that they will put out a statement ahead of Thursday from Mike Vrabel, and they will just reference the statement every time he's asked about it.
So he should be asked anyway. Let him keep.
He should be. He should be asked anyway. You should hold his feet to the fire. You should ask him about why he couldn't. First of all, why was he at that resort? And listen, it's kind of funny to me the way that this has been phrased so many times. That they were at a high-end resort. No, they were at a couple's resort. They were at a couple's hotel in Arizona. Like, don't get it twisted. That's what this was. So call it what it is and hold his feet to the fire. Why have you not been able to produce evidence that you were there with friends? How do you feel about Diana having to resign from her job while you stand up here? How do you think this affects your players? Are you going to address
How about a statement from him after she was forced to resign saying, I support her and her? How about something from him?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, there's been absolutely nothing.
What are we talking about here? I mean, you guys are acting like this is a surprise. Look at Bob Kraft. Look at those women that were deported. That he didn't.
Woman, I think.
Woman was deported, and the mess there. He apologized to his fans. He never apologized
to the women.
To those women.
I know.
I think it's just there's a huge double standard here. And apparently a double standard in terms of reporters at different outlets like ESPN who.
Okay, so that's where I disagree with you. Like, I'm not going to compare being in a romantic, most likely sexual relationship with a source as buying somebody Starbucks or buying them gifts. Like, listen, sports reporting has gotten mucky. And I don't like it, but I'll say this about it. Jay Glazer doesn't hide the fact that he's friends with athletes and that he trains them in Muay Thai or whatever weird boxing thing that he does.
I think that's a big problem.
We go out like in sports, you go to a bar and have a beer with a coach or a source. Like, that happens, but that's not what happened here. Anyone who's ever been in a romantic relationship with someone knows that that is a different mind and that is different access and a different level of emotions and complicated things than just working a source over a beer. Like, that's one area where I'm not going to say like that she should be let off the hook for what she did.
I thought
if that's what she did.
I thought $16,000 worth of chocolates was a lot of money on chocolates.
I mean,
I'd like some of those chocolates.
I do think ESPN has not been hard enough on Adam Schefter and that they should hold him to a higher standard.
Trenni, we gotta go.
We gotta go.
Thank you.
We'll continue with you.
We've been speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a great BPR contributor. Trenni Casey, thank you so much. Coming up after this quick break, a transit check-in with the CEO of MassPort, the Massachusetts Port Authority, Rich Davey. That is next. He's Jim Browdy. I'm Marjorie Egan. This is BPR, GBH, and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When you're getting ready for the day, get ready with us.
Welcome to GBH's Morning Edition. Thanks for having us with you.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst.
Looking at local headlines this morning.
More local news.
More diverse voices.
More unique perspectives.
The gateway cities closer to Boston have seen a lot of investment. Others, particularly further west, haven't gotten that same level of investment.
GBH's Morning Edition. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit, independent, and assisted living residence with a tradition of service, working with Cambridge area seniors for more than 130 years. You can learn more at thecambridgehomes.org/tradition.
and the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, financial journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, and former NASA head Charles Bolden. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, not at the library, but streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, and a week from tomorrow at the library, we have the governor for the first hour will be there, and the mayor, as in Mayor Wu, for the second hour, May 1st. Our co-host is Ken Casey, leader of the Dropkick Murphys.
Wow.
Marjorie hasn't, thank you. Marjorie, that's our guest saying, well, Marjorie
cool
hasn't
show.
had a chance to complain about it yet, but we're in the middle of another school vacation week here
That's
in
right.
Massachusetts. As we prepare for a busy summer of World Cup travel and expensive jet fuel, we thought we'd check in with the CEO of MassPort Authority, Rich Davey. Rich oversees Boston Logan International Airport, Worcester Regional Airport, Hanscom Field, the public maritime facilities in the Port of Boston, including Conley Container Terminal. Enough of this already.
Yeah.
And other places. Rich, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you both?
We're good. Well, you walked in and you said that yesterday was the busiest day at Logan Airport ever?
Friday was the busiest day at Logan Airport ever. That's right. And Thursday had been the busiest day ever. We broke the record the following day. So people I know there's a lot of economic tumult. The world is the world, but people are traveling in and out of Boston.
So what do you think it was? School vacation, the marathon?
Certainly those two are the biggest, but this is obviously our biggest time of the year in any event. But clearly we are seeing a lot of folks continue to travel, which is great news. I mean, I live in the city, so the city was just booming with people.
It was packed.
It was just packed all weekend, which is great to see. But yeah, we've been busy at Logan Airport.
Well, no, I think springtime is generally the busiest time.
We start to, so not only the outbound traffic with school vacation week, but then also we'll see it for commencement as well, right? So graduations, May into early June, we'll get incredibly busy. Then you were talking earlier, you got FIFA. We have the tall ships in July. It is a busy, busy time for the Boston area.
So what's the impact on the war on your job and what you oversee?
So a couple things. One, you mentioned jet fuel. I think that if that's not solved, that is going to have a challenge, right? So a lot of folks, I think, who have been traveling this past week probably booked a few months ago, so their ticket prices were locked in. But ticket prices are clearly going to continue to go up, I think. Fuel tends to be the number 2 largest cost, other than labor, for airlines. So that is something we're going to have to watch closely. Delta.
What does it mean that Europe is going to run out of fuel in 6 weeks? What does that mean?
I'm not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure the entire continent of Europe is going to run out of fuel. I think it was
jet fuel. I'm sorry.
Jet fuel. Yeah, no, jet fuel. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true, but I don't work in Europe, but it seems to me a little far-fetched.
You know, we've asked this in different contexts. A lot of the airlines have also raised baggage fees to accommodate, offset the cost. What is the likelihood of the ticket prices and the baggage fees coming down when this thing is over and the cost of oil and jet fuel comes down?
I mean, look, I think that the likelihood is high. It's a very competitive environment, but as they say, the price of oil goes up, it comes down, it's more sticky. I assume the price of anything coming down is going to be slightly more sticky. That said, the airlines are definitely continue to be in a very competitive environment, including Boston. Delta's about 25% of all of our traffic. JetBlue's about 25%. And then you've got American, United, Southwest being in there as well, and then a tail after that. So it is still a very competitive environment, and Boston in particular tends to be a very, very competitive the airlines like to do business here.
We're talking to Rich Davey, the head of MassPort. At the height of the TSA problems where people were not getting paid and calling in sick, etc., Boston seemed to escape the worst of that, and I wondered why.
Excellent leadership. No, I'm kidding. In
all
all seriousness,
they said Rich Davey.
No, hardly. In all seriousness, really, I think a couple things. Number one is the TSA employees here we have are outstanding. They kept coming to work, even notwithstanding some of the challenges we saw elsewhere. Second is the airport community really came together. So we were giving them gas cards. We were waiving parking fees. There's an employee parking garage and area. We were waiving that. The Dunkin' Donuts and other concessionaires were giving them free food. And so we weren't able to pay people's rent, but we were trying to make it easier on the TSA employees. And I do actually think, not me, it's the TSA leadership, the local leadership is also quite good. So that combination of those three things, I think we, to your point, really weathered the storm.
Speaking of TSA, I don't think it's happened yet. Are you about to start making available online TSA wait times?
Yeah,
yes.
I didn't know
great.
until I knew you were coming. TSA itself is theoretically been doing this in a rather rough fashion to
Yeah,
date?
yeah.
So what are you doing that's different?
So first of all, we should be bragging about it because we have, putting aside government shutdowns and whatnot. TSA, we usually have among the lowest lowest wait times in the U.S. for major airports. It's usually averages about 7 or 8 minutes. Now that'll go up and down obviously during the day, but the average is really good. So to your point, Jim, we're going to be able to providing it on an app, on our website, and then on some of our screens, where you see how long, where your flight is taking off, et cetera. I'll have that. And then eventually we will build out signage. So when you're actually entering the TSA line at our terminals, it'll say 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever.
When's the app and the web thing happening?
We're a couple weeks away. I would say by June 1st, but we're more like mid-May.
Do you have to stand in line if you fly somewhere?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Like everybody else?
Like everybody else, yep.
Okay.
Everybody else.
So
It is a federal offense if I don't, actually.
Is that so?
That is correct. Yep.
So,
But don't Congress people get special deals? Didn't I read about this during the TSA
Well, I
mess?
think they got some, maybe with the airline in particular,
Yeah.
but no. I mean, if you're traveling with an armed escort, so for example, like the president or any governor, for example, that's different. But no, I traveled last week. And I happen to be a Clear member, so I did. The lines are usually shorter in TSA pre and Clear, but no, I wait in line like everybody else.
Let's stay with the good news for a second. This Uber Lyft deal, is that starting this week?
It started just last week, actually.
Okay, and explain to people what it is.
Yeah, so now what you can do is order and be part of an Uber or Lyft shuttle. And so the idea is that you'll be paying a lot lower cost to get in a shared ride. It's like a 12-seat kind of van, which is branded, and it'll be picking up at certain locations. I think one of them will be kind of in the Harvard Square, Cambridge area. North Station will be another, and then eventually perhaps out into the suburbs. And rather than paying, the $30, $40, $50 or more, you'll be paying a particular charge. I think it's somewhere between $5 and $8, maybe up to 10 at some point. Both of them, or actually Lyft has been running this, I should say Uber has been running this in Manhattan, and it's worked really well for JFK and LaGuardia and now Newark. And so we saw that and adopted it. So we're super excited. Ground transportation is our biggest issue. No one has ever said to you, boy, I loved getting to Logan Airport today. I loved it. So figuring out ground transportation is key, and this will be a big part of that.
Well, you don't have to worry about ground transportation, because I read if you drive to, I don't know what it is, Cleveland or something, you check in Cleveland, and then you go to Logan or whatever the hell that thing is you're doing.
Cleveland, Framingham. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, Framingham. Yes,
tell us about that.
Yeah, tell us about that.
The Framingham thing.
The Framingham's about to get a new hockey team, baseball team, and football team now that you've equated them to Cleveland. So our idea is it's called a remote terminal. So this starting in June, you will be able to park at our facility in Framingham, check in through TSA in Framingham, check your bag in Framingham, and you'll get on a secure bus, and that bus will drive you from Framingham to Logan, but it will go through the security gate and drop you off on the other side. So you don't have to go through TSA security. You'll be dropped off on the other side of the airport. We'll be the first in the United States to try this.
Why are you by the way, it's so obvious. I don't mean this in a critical way. It is so obviously a good idea, and apparently it's been working, London, Brussels, and a bunch of places pretty well. Why has nobody else adopted this?
So there's a couple of smaller airports that do this, but you will go to a small airport, get on a bus as opposed to a plane, and then drive you to a larger airport. In Philadelphia, this happens. I don't know. The Congress provided for this this pilot program several years ago, and we're just the first to try it out.
It's good
we're
leadership,
super excited.
Jim. That's what it is.
It's good leadership, exactly right.
Right.
So stop it.
But how does this work?
Yeah.
So you're in Framingham, and the TSA people are out there looking through bags.
Yep.
And where do they do this?
So we are building a small facility right now. Assuming it will go well, we are going to build a permanent one there and likely in other places around. We've talked to the convention center. Think about if you are a conventioneer and you're at Heinz Convention Center, could you get on, a secure bus right from Heinz or the Menino Center, for example, go right to the airport? We think this is an opportunity, particularly since our airport's so constrained. There's not much land we have left. How are other ways we can get people to the airport? So look, I think it's going to be successful. We're super excited. And I will say, when I was down in D.C. a couple months ago for a visit, we were talking to Democrats and Republicans about the need we have to build a new tower at some point. We need federal money to do that. But in this day and age where there's not a lot of anybody agreeing on anything, there was like bipartisan support. Folks are saying, wow, this is a really interesting idea. We hope it goes well there, and we might bring it to Missouri or Florida or wherever.
Do you, wait. Do you have to, if you're, once this happens in
Yes.
June, whenever it is, do you have to say in advance, I'm going to Framingham, I'm not going
Yes.
to Logan directly?
You have to book it in advance. So you just can't show up willy-nilly. It's almost like booking a airline ticket, because when you book an airline ticket, your name and whatnot is run through a security check. This will be like you are, quote, flying from Framingham to Boston and then from Boston to your final
And
destination.
it'll be available to everybody flying on any airline?
It'll be, the first two airlines will be Delta and JetBlue. We're going to start with the two largest first.
Okay.
And then, assuming this is successful, we'll scale it.
And then obviously they bring you back to Framingham after.
Yes,
this is all
but
over,
that
we
you
can
don't
pick
have
up
to
you.
book in advance because
Okay.
you're not going through security, right?
Okay.
That you could just jump on the
So
bus.
Marjorie was too embarrassed to ask you this, but it's what she
About
really
the
wants to know the
burger
most.
vending
No,
machines?
she
Oh.
wants to know what your position was on the pilots meowing and barking the other day.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? We supported it, but apparently,
look, I'm a cat guy, but you probably want to keep that kind of chatter to a minimum, particularly given some of the accidents and challenges that have occurred, right? So levity. Yes, I don't mind some levity, but at the same time, obviously, not that this caused it, but the serious accident, I mean, a lot of people died in Reagan National last year. Like, the aviation is having some challenges.
Was that the two planes that came within 500 feet of each other?
They came close to each other, so like really focusing in on safety and aviation is important. So while I'm a cat guy, keep the chatter.
So wait,
ask,
before you get to the burgers and the
Yeah.
vending machines,
Yeah.
The auditor has said, this is several months ago, I don't know if
Yes.
there's an update, that her attempt to audit non-disclosure, non-disparagement language and some termination things of, I think it was 21 agencies, I can't remember.
Yes.
You were among them, and she said you were not in compliance.
She disparaged me and not being on the non-disparagement clause.
So what is what's your response and what's the status?
Yes, so we respectfully disagreed with the auditor. We have been in full compliance the whole time. There's been no lawsuit, I think, because I think cooler heads prevailed to see that we have been in compliance.
Does she agree that you're in compliance now?
I haven't talked to the auditor lately. I think her staff have said that, but I mean, look, if there's something that remains to be provided, we're happy to provide it. I think in that instance, the auditor was frustrated that she asked for 121 employee records, which we provided 111. 10 employees objected, which they're allowed to under law, and there was no pursuit from the auditor's office. I think that has been now resolved. But look, we have nothing to hide. We want to share what is permissible, and we'll continue to do that. The auditor audits, agencies like ours all the time. And
you enter into non-disclosure agreements with
we don't
permanent
anymore.
employees? You don't anymore?
No. Once the governor put out the executive order, was it 16 months ago? We were not required to comply with it, but we voluntarily comply with it.
Talking to Rich Davey, he's the head of MassPort.
Okay, so let's get back to some other exciting upgrades.
Yes.
The burgers and the
Yes.
vending machines and the kid port.
Well, first of all, the White
play
Castle.
areas.
They're White Castle.
The
The first
White
White Castle in New England. So
okay, so
there's
we
a bit
can
of a
also
cult.
get cheeseburgers as well as
There, cheeseburgers, sliders, yes.
So
there used to
you
be a
just go
White
to a-
Castle in Central Square, and I got in an argument with a guy. You know what he
Yes?
did?
What?
The cheeseburgers were then 99 cents. He put my penny change inside the cheeseburger.
Okay, that's actually hilarious.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Marjorie.
Did you eat it, or did you find?
I bid on it.
Oh, you bid on it. Oh, okay.
So you get up and you put your credit card or whatever in
Yes.
the vending machine, and then the thing heats it up and then
Yes.
delivers it to you.
Yes.
A hot cheeseburger.
Yes.
Okay. What's the kid port?
So the kid port, I think maybe we were the first airport in the country maybe 40 years ago to build these little playgrounds, if you will, right, for parents and kids to sort of in between flights or as they're waiting for their flight. And so they're a little tired, a little old, and so we're going to try to upgrade some of the kid ports. Now, I will say this. I don't have kids, but I did walk by and I saw a parent. It looked like we should probably have a bar at the kid port as well for that poor parent. We're not going to do that, but we're going to try to upgrade the kid port such that it's, let's just say, more interesting for all ages, including abilities too. I think some of the
climbing structures or little sandboxes. Or
little climbing structures, all aviation. You're able, and you'd be welcome to join us.
You did the ribbon cutting at Roger Berkowitz's deal?
Yes, yeah.
What'd you eat?
I had the clam chowder, which was really good.
Double clam chowder?
Yeah, it was very, very good. And I tried the po' boy, I think, the po' boy sandwich. And
How was it?
That was really good, too.
Yeah.
I mean, Roger, as you know, the guy is fantastic, and we're happy to have him back in a brick and mortar.
It's great he's there.
And we left out the
Logan.
Irish pubs.
So, I mean, can you think of anything, maybe you can, but can you think of not much else more quintessential than an Irish pub in Boston?
Yeah, it's
and
true.
how many do we have in Logan Airport?
I don't know.
Zero.
Zero.
Zero. So we're working on one there.
Yeah,
it just feels
well,
like
obviously his idea is going to put the pub right in the kid thing.
Sales will go through the roof.
You know,
Exactly.
a lot of people that are nervous flyers, even if they're not big drinkers, they might find it soothing to go and have
And if you're not a big
beers.
drinker, we've got the pets you can. We've got our
that's
Boss
right.
Paws programs,
That's right.
our therapy
The
pets.
therapy pets.
So we got one thing for
We
everybody.
only have about 30 seconds
Sorry.
left. What's the biggest thing that you're attempting to conquer right now that is yet unresolved? Briefly, if you can.
I think sustainable aviation fuel, like, you often in this show often talks about greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, right? And 90% of the greenhouse gas emissions at Logan Airport are a result of jet fuel. If we can unlock a cleaner or clean jet fuel, it really changes. It changes the air we breathe. It changes the air the neighborhoods around us are, and so. That's a big deal, but it's also a long-term goal. That's something we're working on with the industry, with governors and others. So
Let's continue that next time. Rich
Awesome.
Davey, it's
Our
good to
staff
see you.
wants to know if there's a poodle room anticipated at Logan.
You know what
That's
that is?
Cash Patel was hanging around
look,
in Las
I'm a
Vegas.
cat guy, so Cash and I, if we need to go toe-to-toe on that, it might be a meow room. Sorry.
Okay. Rich Davey, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you
well.
very much. We have been speaking with Rich Davey, CEO of the Massachusetts Port Authority. Thank you so much for coming in.
Take care, Rich.
We say goodbye to those of you listening at any PM. Make sure to tune in to Fabulous 413 at 3 this afternoon. We're going to keep going here in Boston. Coming up after a quick break, CNN's John King zooms in from the road. He's been in Ohio.
He's in Ohio, yeah.
We're going to talk with him about the latest national political headlines. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR and GBH and NEPM streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
On April 28th, GBH invites you for a special look into the untold origin story of Frankenstein. Hear from award-winning novelist Emily Franklin as she unpacks her evocative new novel, Love and Other Monsters. Tickets at gbh.org/events.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And GM Roth Design Remodeling, providing custom kitchens, bathrooms, and accessory dwelling units. Their design team works to create living-in-place solutions tailored to the needs of each home and family. More information at gmroth.com. And Neville Place Assisted Living in Cambridge, providing residents with a range of services designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. More at nevilleplace.org/care.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're going to be back at the library tomorrow. We're not there today, obviously, but we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Quick programming notes. John Gruber from MIT will be with us. Carol Rose from the ACLU and more. April 28th, double hitter sort of thing. We'll have the governor with us, Maura Healey, from 11 to noon, and then the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, from 1 to 2. And on May 1st, we're going to have a special co-host, Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys. Very exciting. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. John's the man behind the reporting project all over the map, and if he is where he was last night, he's joining us on the road from Ohio. Hello, John.
Happy Tuesday. I've made my way. I was in Zanesville last night when I was on the air, and now I'm down at the southeastern Ohio in a little town called Portsmouth. Right across the river is Kentucky.
Oh, great. Well, we want to talk about what you're hearing in Portsmouth in just a second, but I did want to ask you, there's been some kind of disturbing reporting, the Wall Street Journal talking about how after the plane went down in Iran, the American plane, that the president was so erratic, his aides kept him out of the room to exclude him from what was going on there. And his kind of kind of bizarre Truth Social post claiming that Iran has agreed to things it hasn't agreed to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So where are we now with Iran? We don't even know if they're going to be peace talks or not.
We don't. The vice president, J.D. Vance, was supposed to leave for Pakistan for a second round of peace talks, and I was just checking in with our White House team's reporting, and he's at the White House for meetings today because it is uncertain whether those talks are actually going to happen. And so we're in limbo is where we are. And I was looking back at this, I'm on the road, so how I see it is in conversations with voters, including several veterans in the last few days. I know we'll get to that in a few minutes. But you see it in the gas price signs when you drive. But back in Washington, just, remember, again, whether you think this was a good idea or a bad idea, the president said 2 or 3 days in, we're almost done.
Yeah.
And my little excursion is almost over. However you describe it, it is clearly not over. And the unpredictability has giant domestic implications. It has huge global economic and security implications. And I think to your point about the Wall Street Journal piece and others like it, it is raising, and I can tell you it's raising it among politicians in Washington because I spent a lot of my time there, but I'm lucky that I spent most of my time not in Washington. And even among Trump voters, you get some questions about, like, what's going on there, about him and how he's doing this.
Not only did he promise this thing would be over quite rapidly, this morning on CNBC, he incredibly says if he had been president, he would have ended Vietnam and Iraq very quickly in the face of what's typical insanity. In any case, we'll keep you apprised here as best we can if we hear more about Vance and his plans. We also read, as I know you did, and we hope most of our listeners did, this piece by Sarah Fitzgerald about Kash Patel being drunk a lot of the time, unfindable. They requested, according to the story, breaching equipment because they couldn't get to him wherever he was sleeping that particular night. We know this came out the same weekend the labor secretary is forced out, 3 women forced out of the cabinet, not just because of what she did, but what her father and her husband apparently did too on her watch. Does Kash Patel, he's suing the Atlantic for $250 million. Does Kash Patel survive this, John King?
It's a fantastic question because I can tell you this, Jim. I know inside the White House there's a lot of unhappiness with Kash Patel and his sort of my way or the highway approach. Trump can do that because Trump is Trump. And if you work for Trump, you have to sort of accept that as the price of admission, that the president is going to do things his way. And the president sometimes is going to leave a meeting saying, I'm going to do A, and he's going to go off and write a Truth Social that says B, C, D, or Z. But the president does expect his team to be loyal. And, I obviously haven't spoken to the president about this, but I have spoken to people around Trump who say that there's some questions about this and that it's embarrassing for the White House. Now I'm going to add this part, though. Number one, he went on Fox News last night and said it's not true, and he said he's suing. There are a number of people in Congress, and these include Republicans. We've been having this conversation now for recurring Tuesdays. There seem to be a few more Republicans every week willing to say, we need to ask some questions here. So will Kash Patel go up to the Judiciary Committee and sit down and take questions and answer this? If it's not true, lay out his explanations and have facts and not just, belligerent statements about the reporter's an idiot or it's fake news or I'm going to sue, but actually answer the questions. That would be one piece of it. The last thing I'll say about this is that this one, look, you made a key point that the 3 cabinet members have left are all women. I want to add this one. Kash Patel has a relationship with a piece of the Trump base that is different from any of them. And so in a midterm election year, this is the last thing any president wants, shake up turmoil in your cabinet, meaning your administration is not working. Your administration is not functioning at a high level. It's the last thing you want in a year when it's all about, number one, convincing the American people to stay the course in the midterm, and number 2, to convince your base to come out and turn out and vote. So the Kash Patel thing for me is more, there's no question that there are some people at the White House, including the chief of staff, who say, let's get this ship in the best shape we can heading into the midterm cycle, which is now 6 months away. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it now. But the Kash Patel one is sort of extra rich because of his connection to the base.
One thing, getting back to the Iran situation for a minute, you read some of these stories about Trump being so erratic and so short-tempered and ranting and raving. And then you look at Pete Hegseth with these over-the-top press conferences. And I think I can't be the only person that worries, that it's going to be hard to get a deal, I think, with Iran over the Strait and over the uranium and all that. And that Trump could just kind of fly off the handle and do something crazy. And I wonder, Hegseth has fired so many generals. Are there people there around him who are cooler heads to prevail, or could he just do something?
How about the people in the Wall Street Journal story who
Well, yeah.
excluded him from the room when the second airman?
I think this is kind of scary, especially when you think about the damage the strait being closed is doing. We're lucky, in a sense, we haven't suffered that much, but all around the world, I mean, they're rationing energy, and it's very scary.
It is very scary. Again, a day or two of strikes at targeted facilities, like, whether you agree or disagree with that, I think a lot of Americans could have taken that and okay, I disagree with that, I agree with that, but it's done, we're over, and I'll now factor it into however I vote next time or what I think tomorrow about this issue. As it drags on and causes all the domino effects and economic effects and security effects that you're talking about, I do think it is. Look, our Pentagon team has had some amazing reportings. This other reporting, that's not my job, so I don't pretend to be an expert in the field, but you do see a lot of credible reporting on tension between Hegseth and some of the military officials, tension between Hegseth and his own Trump-appointed Army Secretary, you see in some of this reporting. And again, you do not want discord, dysfunction. Debate is fine in any organization. You want debate in an organization, especially if you're making big, galactically important decisions like this. You want a healthy debate. But tension, mistrust, distrust, obviously not healthy in any organization, and the stakes of this one, I don't need to explain. You want the Pentagon running as smoothly as possible, and then on top of that, across the river, you have a commander-in-chief who, as Jim noted at the beginning, is all over the map, literally all over the place in the volatility of his statements and saying things that simply are not true and have not turned out to be true. And so you asked, the preface of this, I think, was, will Iran make a deal? One of the guys who was part of that, Brett McGurk, is now a CNN contributor.
He's great.
And he talks about just how long it took.
Yes.
How long it took
Yes.
to build up just a basic. We don't trust them and they don't trust us, and that's not going to change no matter who our president is. Maybe it changes 25, 50 years down the road, but it's not going to change the moment. So you have to build up some sort of a miniature subset of trust about this one thing we're negotiating.
Let me just say one thing about that. I mean, John Kerry was with us for an hour last week or the week before and said, just like you talked about, 2 years to lead to the. Yeah. However, the one difference is Barack Obama, I don't think, was going to lie about the outcome. It's conceivable that a deal is cut that isn't what it appears to be. Isn't his goal right now to just have the strait opened and say that Iran is not going to...
But he's not going to do what Obama... He can't be compared to Barack Obama. That would be too much for Trump. He can't be doing a deal that
he'll just say it's a better deal. In any case, can we go to Ohio? I saw you last night, and I'm assuming you wouldn't be spending valuable time in Ohio if it was as red as it's been in recent elections. So the takeaway is it may not be?
The takeaway is that Ohio, for the first time in a decade, may be competitive. I used to come here all the time. I've been doing this for almost 40 years. I used to come here every 2 years because it was the bellwether state in the middle of the country. It was the place it was a political reporters. It was like, the Football Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio, and so was every political reporter every 2 years. Because you went to Stark County to study swing voters because that was the microcosm of Ohio. We haven't done that in a decade because it hasn't been competitive. And I love this state because it's big and it's complicated and its people are amazing. Of all spectrum. So the Democrats think they can win a Senate seat, and they think it's actually possible they might be able to win the governor's race. Hasn't been a Democratic governor here in 15 years. Sherrod Brown just lost his seat in 2024. Now he's running for the other Senate seat, which was the Vance seat. But he's the only Democrat elected to the United States Senate from Ohio in the 21st century. Right?
Wow.
I know he was just there a couple of years ago. And so Ohio has turned red anyway, and especially red under Trump. And the Democrats think they have this chance. Why? Most of it's affordability. That affordability punch that people are taking is exacerbated by Iran because of the gas prices, the energy prices, a lot of farms here, fertilizer, and the things that happen in farming. And plus you've had, sometimes, we have this in Massachusetts a lot. After 10 years of Democratic or 10 or 12 years of Democratic, people say, okay, let's switch. Let's have a Republican. So you have that dynamic as well in play. So I do think it's possible, not easy by any means. But if Democrats are going to retake the Senate, they need to win this seat. And here's why Ohio is potentially fascinating to me, which is why I'm here trying to answer the question. If the Republicans get shellacked in this midterm election, that means Trump is weaker. Well, it also means J.D. Vance, former senator from Ohio, now vice president of the United States, is weaker. And the Republican candidate for governor here still has to win a primary next month, but most likely to win pretty easily is Vivek Ramaswamy. who thinks of himself as Trump 2.0 and the next generation of MAGA. So MAGA is on the ballot here. The future of MAGA is the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years of our life, right? What happens after Trump to the Republican Party? And so Ohio, to me, is almost like the preview. Ohio 2026 is a bit of a preview about the MAGA conversation we're going to be having in every presidential nominating state in 2028. And how many Republicans run for president in 2028 is going to be determined by how bad this year is for Trump and the Republicans. And so I just wanted to come here and say, really? Is this really competitive? And I can tell you, I've been here since Saturday, and we have been all over the state. We've been in Cleveland. We've been in Akron. We've been in the Mahoning Valley where, remember Lordstown GM? Trump said, don't sell your house, I'll save those jobs. Well, his manufacturing renaissance is a mirage. It doesn't exist. So a lot of these union guys who voted for him are now saying, I got sold a bag of goods. I was having this conversation just very quickly. I'm sitting outside a gym in Southeast Ohio, owned by a veteran, guy who did 2 tours in Iraq, who voted for Trump twice, and he started to tear up talking about Iran. Because he says he sees no plan. He says Iran is a dangerous regime and the United States should be doing everything it can to stop it. He says, do not get me wrong, I'm not a patsy and these are not good guys. And we might have to have a military action against them someday. But where's the plan? What was the plan? What was the goal? What was the reason? Hasn't heard any of that from his commander-in-chief. And so he's worried about the guys serving today, and he says it's kind of triggered him a little bit about his own service. And he's a hero in this community. He's helping rebuild a small town that's been punished by all the forces that we've talked about before along small towns in America, along the rivers that used to be, manufacturing hubs that have taken kicks in the teeth for, 30 years now. But so he voted for Trump twice, and he's going to vote for Sherrod Brown, and he's probably going to vote Democratic for governor. Because he says, no, this is bad. He's essentially, voted for Trump in 2024. That's not that long ago. And now he says, we need to stop this guy.
John King, as always, incredibly valuable contribution. Thanks for your time. Good luck in Ohio. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. See you
John King
soon.
on the road.
We've been speaking with CNN Chief National Correspondent John King, the man behind the reporting project all over the map. He is in Ohio right now. Coming up after this quick break, the Wall Street Journal's personal tech columnist, Nicole Nguyen. She's with us. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You are listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, April 21st, 1926. A day like any other, and also like no other. 1 century-old newspaper found under the floorboards. Birth of a queen, the death of a local police officer, and hey, even Father John needs to take his medicine.
That is so disgusting.
That's the Curiosity Desk, today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. UMass, the state's flagship public research university, empowers students to be the future in the pursuit of progress for Massachusetts and beyond. More at umass.edu.
And Schneider Electric, providing energy technology and sustainability advisory services to help the Boston Athletic Association shape more sustainable events for athletes, fans, and the community. Learn more at se.com.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're not at the library. We'll be back there tomorrow, but we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A week from today at the library, the governor, Maura Healey, will join us for an hour, followed by the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, will join us for an hour. And then on Friday, May 1st, we have a co-host. It's Ken Casey, leader of the Dropkick Murphys. Big news yesterday. Tim Cook, or as he's known by Donald Trump, Tim Apple, is stepping down. We thought we'd do a tech world check-in. Joining us now via Zoom from the Bay Area is the cilantro loving, which is one of the reasons I like her already. Nicole Nguyen is a personal tech columnist at the Wall Street Journal, covering how big tech shapes our lives. Nicole, it's great to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I do love cilantro, and whoever says to the contrary is just wrong.
I am so with you, my friend. Let me just tell you.
Well, in a second, we're going to find out how we knew about the cilantro. But before we get to that, okay, Tim Cook is no longer running Apple. Is this good, bad? How do people like you assess his term?
A lot of analysts say that John Turnus, who is the incoming CEO who will replace Tim in September, is like the board copy and pasted another Tim Cook.
Oh.
John Turnus is 50 years old. Tim Cook was also 50 when he first took the role. John Turnus is a hardware guy and Tim is an operations guy, so there is more nuance there. But Tim Cook was largely John Turnus's mentor, and I think that he's a continuity candidate versus a radical change from Apple's board.
And Cook is going to be the, executive chair of the board, so he's not going anywhere. I mean, he's going somewhere, but he's not leaving the company, right?
No, he will take Apple said he'll talk to policymakers and maybe take a broader role in that sense, but John Turnus will be the top dog and be in charge of the next iPhone and many iPhones after that.
Well, also he's got to stay because who's going to present gold trophies to President Trump if Tim Cook is not around to do that? So getting back to cilantro,
yes.
Nicole, you asked the question that I think about a lot but didn't have the courage to ask, is what does AI know about you? And I didn't, when you wrote this, did you literally ask, what do you know about me? How do you tailor responses to me based upon what you know? Did you actually ask those questions?
I did, and I was interested in asking those questions because Claude and Gemini have rolled out tools to import your memory from ChatGPT or another tool into their own repositories. And so I was like, wait a minute, memory, interesting. Let's take a peek. And there is in settings in a lot of these bots, a place where you can look up little notes that the AI has filed away about you, like my love of cilantro, for example. But you can also just ask the bot, what do you remember about me? And the list that it spit out was pretty surprisingly intimate, I'd say.
And
how
where did this...
were some of these upsetting to you? I know you said you wouldn't share some because they were personal. You didn't want the reader to know. Were some things that it did know upsetting to you that it did?
Not upsetting, but in these conversations that we have with our bots, and it's not a perfect picture of your personality, of course, because it doesn't have access to every part of your life, but it does have access to the parts that I'm asking about. So, I asked it about creating a will because I have a young son, and that's the responsible thing to do. And so it sort of knew, like, who the guardians are of my son. That should my husband and I pass, which is a pretty personal thing. It deduced the cross streets of where I live based on some of my inquiries about restaurants and things to do nearby, and looking up schools and that kind of thing. And so, not upsetting, but you're like, oh, wow, that is a lot to know about someone, perhaps more than some of these other services that I've been using for decades.
Okay, I am really inept in this whole world. When the chatbot knew
you
about
mean in the tech world, not in the whole world.
Not in the whole world. I'm not inept at everything, but in the technologically, I'm really kind of pathetic. So when you said that the bot knew about the guardians of your child, if something should happen, did they know this from conversations with you? Did they know this from? Because usually, if you're going to go look up, you see what's written about somebody, right? That some news site somewhere wrote about someone. So how does this chatbot find these things out?
This was a conversation that I proactively had with the bot.
Okay.
I have never made a will before. Where should I start? And then it prompted me, I prompted it, where do I begin? And then it gave me a list of suggestions of things that I should include in it. And it, was asking me about my personal life to help me tailor it and where I live. And so that's how it knew.
That's where it came from. Okay.
And could any third party access any of that information, Nicole, about you?
Ideally, no. The companies themselves do have access to these conversations if they're flagged by the company's own AI for safety reasons. So the companies say, but these conversations aren't encrypted end to end. And so they do, the companies, employees of the companies could, if they wanted, access these conversations. And so OpenAI and Anthropic, Google, they tell their users, please do not tell us state secrets. Do not tell us your deepest, darkest secrets, because the technology, which is generative AI, is still very much in working progress, and that means that the companies need to potentially train future models. If you've set your settings that way on your conversations, they may need to flag the conversations if there's suicidal ideation or other dangerous topics.
We're talking to Nicole Nguyen, who's the personal tech columnist at the Wall Street Journal.
But one more thing about this, since we've all
Boy,
read
do
about...
we have a nervous woman in this
well,
studio,
it's just,
I should say.
I think it's frightening,
It is
a lot of it. And we've all read about people that are in romantic relationships with their chatbot. So the potential, as you say, for the companies knowing these things is that you could be doing things with your chatbot that you wouldn't want people to know. I mean, the opportunity for people to be blackmailed or some other, you know what I mean, undermined is basically, I think the old line was, don't put anything online you wouldn't want your grandmother to know. And maybe that is the same line we should use for what we tell Claude or Gemini or whatever.
I think that's right. A lot of these cloud-based services are in training. And so that means that your conversations are not private unless the model is hosted locally on your device, which is not the case for Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. And the biggest threat to your data is a data breach. And as someone who's covered this for, a decade and a half, every major company on the planet has experienced some kind of data breach.
Yeah.
And in this new era of AI, more vulnerabilities will be exposed. And so be careful with what you tell your bot.
So, Nicole, a second example of you being far bolder than I have not asked AI what it knows about me. And while I am borderline hypochondriac, I have not uploaded my blood work or anything else like that you did. Tell us about your experience and how worried you were about protecting the privacy of your health records.
So Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, a lot of the major providers have a new tool that allow you to plug in your entire medical history and also decades worth of wearables data, including your resting heart rate and other sensitive biometrics, and plug them right into the chatbot. So you can ask things like, give me a score on my cardiovascular health, or what's my risk for disease, and it can comb through all of that data and spit out an answer. On the one hand, AI is really good at ingesting a lot of different data points, like what's on your medical record, and helping you make sense of it. On the other hand, AI is prone to making mistakes and making things up, and potentially giving you a diagnosis or something, or giving you medical anxiety for something that isn't based in reality.
Well, and by the way, obviously, I don't have to tell people this, but I will anyway. One of the great concerns about that is ideally, as we've discussed with healthcare professionals on the show, it's a supplement to what your PCP discusses with you. The fact that so many people can't access a primary care provider means they're solely reliant on AI, which is scary. But how about the privacy aspect of this? Is that how confident are you that that will stay private? And you also talk a little bit about the ability to remove data. Could you speak to both those things, please?
Yeah, I'm not confident, but I did this stunt in order to show people what the benefits are. And to be frank, most people who turn to AI for health advice are already uploading their medical records. Around 40% of people are doing that. And so I think I wanted to cover, what are the trade-offs here? And the reason why I was inspired to ask Claude about my medical records is because I got blood work done and my PCP didn't reach out to me about the results because they were normal. But I was curious, what do these cholesterol levels mean? My family has a history of high blood pressure. I wanted to know where I stood. And I think a lot of people feel like there's a gray area there that they can't access because your doctor isn't available on call 24/7, but a chatbot is. And I do mention in the piece that you can delete conversations. And when you delete conversations, they are not immediately wiped from your AI provider servers, but they are eventually deleted from servers. And so it's not like you deleted a conversation and it's floating around in the ether forever. So that is an option for folks.
You know, Nicole, we have less than a minute left. So real quick, you wrote a great column about kids discovering the joys of landlines. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Or their parents discovering the joys, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, is this a reasonable thing for us to be thinking about for our kids?
This was such a fun story to write. I talked to a lot of 9 to 11-year-olds that were trying to figure out like how to hold a phone. They thought you had to hold it like this,
Great.
like a phone on speaker.
That's a riot.
A lot of experts say that this is like social media with training wheels. You know, it's allowing kids to communicate with other kids without unfettered access to the internet. And I think it's an exciting development for younger folks.
So, Nicole, before you go, we need some personal advice. One of our common closest friends can't be in the same room with cilantro. What do you do when you have somebody you're really tight with who literally cannot even... What do you do? Find new friends?
I think you sprinkle it into a sauce or a pesto and sort of introduce it slowly back into their lives. No, I think it's a genetic disposition.
I think so.
Really?
Some people think it tastes like soap.
Like soap. Oh, you didn't know this? Like soap,
I
exactly.
did know this. Now that you mention it, you're right. Oh, that's horrible.
Well, we're with you anyway, Nicole. And this was a joy meeting you. Hope to talk to you again.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
for
Your
your
stuff
time.
is great. Thank you
great.
very much for being with us, Nicole. We appreciate it.
Thank you both for having me. Talk soon.
We've been speaking with Nicole Nguyen. She's a tech personal columnist at the Wall Street Journal. Great stuff she does. By the way, the last name is Nguyen, if you want to look her up. Coming up after this quick break, we'll open the lines to get your thoughts on secrets. Smoke them even if you've got them. The research says they're not good to hold on to. Are you a secret keeper or a gossip monger? Call or text us next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
After 240 years, Pittsburgh's biggest newspaper was going to close down until a nonprofit focused on local news stepped in.
Great journalism, if there's not scale, if there's not a lot of readers, if it's not being read, doesn't really have an impact.
I'm Juana Summers. We hear from the new owners of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Children's Museum. Families can spring into play during April Vacation Week, April 20th through 26th, with cardboard creations, dress-up, singing, and dancing. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
And Bernadine sung Megasin at Dream Mega International Realty, dedicated to helping buyers and sellers across Greater Boston, offering market insight and guidance through each step of the process. More at homesbybernadine.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. Not at the library today because they're cleaning up after the marathon. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the library tomorrow. John Gruber will talk about 20 years of Romney Care, and he helped craft Romney Care with former Governor Romney. Carol Rose of the Civil Liberties Union and more. And then next Tuesday, Mayor for the second hour, Governor for the first hour, and May 1st, which is next Friday, May Day, Ken Casey of the Dropkicks co-host with us. The research is in, and, well, here's the deal. Keeping secrets is bad for your health. Stress, worry, and fear of being found out all factor into a measurable psychological toll. But how do you square that scientific knowledge with the fact that you have to keep secrets to share secrets, and gossip is one of life's greatest pleasures? For example, this is a true story, no exaggeration. Marjorie walks into the studio today. We were obviously off yesterday, so we hadn't seen each other in a few days. No hello, not how are you. On my honor, the first thing she says when she walks in, got any new gossip? First words
That's
out.
right.
Is that true?
It is true because, you're one of the preeminent gossips.
Well,
I know.
I'm going to explain myself.
You
in a
always
minute.
have the scoops.
Where do you fall in the secret keeper to gossip share spectrum? Would you take a secret to your grave to protect the person who told it to you in confidence? And when you do keep that secret you promised to, does it have a deleterious effect on your health? Secrets in You, 877-301-8970. I want to speak for myself up front.
Yes, Jim.
There is nobody better, and I mean this sincerely, at keeping a secret if I say I'm going to keep it. However, if it is not a secret, there is nobody better at spreading it. I don't think in my whole life I've violated a promise to somebody to keep a secret. But if they don't say those magic words, this is a secret, you got to pledge it to me, all bets are off.
Yeah,
and
a lot of people say, this is a secret. And then the person says, well, yeah, I can only tell one person. And then obviously it spreads all over
What
the room.
happens when someone tells you a secret that implicates someone else? And this is when you start feeling bad, this research I'm talking about. And you know that person's life would be improved if they were to know the secret you agreed not to share.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do with that dilemma?
Well, this is a great story. I probably told you this before, but a friend of mine's child was getting married, and the best man, right before the wedding, like a couple of weeks before the wedding, went up to her and he said, I got to tell you something.
This is a true story? I don't remember.
He's my best friend. I love him. But he drops you off and he's going down to bars down the street and picking up women. Don't marry the guy.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, that was a great
What happened?
story. She didn't marry him.
Wow.
Yeah, he denied it, of course. And she said, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Give me your phone. And then she uncovered
Is
all
that
the.
true?
Yeah, it's a true story. So it
Well,
was.
you should. I do remember. You should finish the story.
Yeah.
Where did he go? Poodle room. That's where he.
You went to the poodle room.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I
go
mean,
ahead.
that's a tough one. If you know that your best friend is doing something really
tough.
dastardly and underhandedly, like cheating on their husband-to-be or wife-to-be, or they have a serious problem with booze or drugs or something, if you know that, it's always a debate. Or if somebody's husband is really dastardly, do you tell them or do you not tell them? I mean, that's a tough one. But I think in this case, he did the right thing and told her. That's kind of. But then on the other hand, you think you don't want to. You have to be careful of telling secrets, making sure it's not going to hurt somebody.
Well, you know what the other key thing is? Do you remember? Of course you do. The great Alan Lupo. Alan was a wonderful columnist for the Globe. The Herald. He worked at the Herald before that, didn't he? Before he went to the Globe.
Yep.
If you if Alan Lupo.
Phoenix. He worked for Phoenix.
Okay. If Alan Lupo called you, I don't know if you remember this because you were never in the position I was in, and he would ask you a question. And if you were to say, well, I'll tell you this, but off the record, do you know what Alan said to you?
Nothing's off the record.
Nothing is off the record. If you can't tell me
Yeah,
on the record,
a lot of reporters do
I
that.
have no interest in having the
Well,
conversation.
because it's a good point, because it doesn't do you any good. If something's off the record, it doesn't do you any good.
also, maybe, I don't know, I want to speak for Alan, but maybe you don't want to be in a position where you forget. You ever been told a secret, you forget it was a secret?
Yes.
And then you disclose it
That's
to
right.
somebody?
Yeah, that was
in
a
any
big,
case.
big mistake.
By the way, there
but they
was a
do
story.
say certain people should keep secrets, and journalists or therapists or
Yeah.
doctors or spies.
Talk show hosts.
Talk show hosts.
There was a headline in Vogue that one of our colleagues gave us this morning. Marjorie could have written it. Is it wrong that I live for gossip? By the way, you're fairly trustworthy. You're trustworthy too, right? Even though you're a gossip hound.
I love to hear great stories of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's
called gossip.
It's called gossip. Yeah. And these stories are kind of, there's an old line. Somebody just sent it in the text, and it's true. It's an AA line. We are as sick as our secrets. The idea that if you have a lot of secrets, you're kind of in a screwed up situation. But these stories are kind of saying that it's sort of human nature to gossip, but you have to be judicious about what's harmful, what's not harmful, what's the secret you have to keep, and what's the secret you don't have to keep.
Well, by the way, let me just say, as someone who's often answered your question, do you have any gossip? Gossip can be vicious, which is the best kind, without being harmful.
That's right.
Can be. Is that a fair statement? I think it is, right?
Yeah, it can be vicious without being
harmful.
Well,
yeah.
I guess it's probably harmful to the person that's doing the
Well,
vicious
maybe it's
stuff.
not, because they are who they are.
And you know what else, too?
No, I don't.
These stories point out, and this is a great point.
Please.
There are lots of people who, you may not even know them that well, people at work or people in your personal life who tell you secrets about other people. And it's kind of a strategic thing to kind of kind of drag you into their web, because it makes you think that they're friendlier with you, but really they're telling the same kinds of things.
By
to
the way,
everybody
Marjorie
else.
wants to be drawn into anybody's web. So let me just say, you got a secret? That's a woman to tell. 877-301-8970. Secrets in you. Do you trust other people to share your secrets with? If someone shares a secret with you, are you a reliable protector of that secret? And what do you do in the dilemma we talked about 5 minutes ago when you agreed to keep something secret, but the information would be of great value, like that information about the would-be husband? Do you violate the commitment to the other person and just share it? What do you do? 877-301-8970.
Jim,
what?
A texter says, I have a great secret about Harriet Heinemann that I'll never tell. We haven't mentioned Harriet in quite some time.
We're working on.
How is Harriet?
It's a long story. We'll talk about it soon. Jamie asked a good
There's
question.
a secret there that we don't know
There are a lot
about.
of layers here.
Lot
How
of
do you weigh
secrets.
secondhand secrets? This is Jamie writing us. A sworn secret that someone else broke by telling you. You didn't pledge to keep the secret. They violated the commitment to somebody else. You weren't part of the pact. Are you free to spread the information? That is a brilliant question.
How many times have I told you a secret and you spread it?
Every time. Why would I not? Asa, by the way, I really am. I one of my better qualities
is that right?
I am so, because I don't want anybody spreading my secrets. I really don't. Really? I know so much about Marjorie, by the way. Let me just say, I know more about this woman. She's turning red right now, which I think says everything you need to know.
Jim? I know a few things about you, too.
Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
It's mutually assured destruction.
Exactly.
That's the deal here.
Ellen in Weymouth, you're first on the Secret Hour here on BPR. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, guys. Good afternoon. It's very much a confusing topic. I do think if you are keeping a secret internally, it kind of eats at you.
Yes.
And then if you share a secret about somebody who has told you in confidence, you are betraying them. And it is almost like, that kind of eats at you too, if that will hurt them.
Ellen,
that's one of the great points.
Go
ahead, Ellen.
By me.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just always think, is this a story that should be told by me? And if it's somebody else's story, it probably shouldn't be told by me. So I am one of those people that takes it to the grave if somebody tells me something. And then my husband is like loose lips. Oh, my God. He thinks nothing is sacred. And I'm like, dude, I literally don't tell you anything because I know that you just don't even get the idea that nobody else would want to know this.
Hey,
I
Ellen.
want their story told.
Ellen, I have I should have brought this up before, but your take to the grave line reminded me. Let's assume you have a secret that you're going to take to the grave, and you have somebody, and you pledge to keep it secret, but there's somebody else who you totally trust, not the person about whom the secret entails. Would you share it with that person because you trust them to honor the commitment that you made, or no exceptions to the rule?
I'm currently in that situation, and again, I just go back to it's not my story to tell.
That's a great line.
But you know
That's
what,
a great
Ellen?
line.
What you said about how these things eat away at you, they do. Especially, I think if you know something. The example I gave before of someone doing something bad to someone that you love, and you know that they're doing something bad, and it's a secret, and you feel like you can't tell them. You know what I mean?
Ellen,
kind of stuff.
that was a great call. Thank you for starting this conversation off. 877-301-8970. So answer the same question I asked Ellen. You promised someone you wouldn't share the secret,
right?
But there's somebody else you totally trust. And do you ever say to them, you got to promise me you're not going to tell anybody because I promised somebody else I wasn't going to tell anybody. So you have to honor that. You ever done that?
Well, there are certain people I know that are really good at keeping secrets, and there are certain people I know that leak like a sieve.
Yeah.
How do you say that? Sieve?
Sieve, yeah, like a sieve, yeah.
So I don't tell the people that leak like a sieve, but I've told things.
I know who you're talking about, too.
That's very...
The gossip queen of North America? one of the greats, but she can spread a story, let me tell
Yeah,
you.
but my sister's really good at keeping secrets.
She is?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know?
Because the things I found out that went on like 20, 30 years ago, I had no idea what was going on.
Really?
She kept a secret. Yeah, she's
Good
really
for
good at keeping
her.
a secret. I know.
Isn't it great to have somebody close to you with whom you can share a secret and you know it's going to stay with them too?
Yes, and that's one of the things they say in these stories, that if you really have a secret that's eating away at you and you feel like you can't tell someone, that you should go see a therapist and ask them what to do, or confide in someone to get advice on what to do. And they're talking about things like somebody's got a drinking problem or an addiction problem or kind of dangerous behavior or criminal behavior, that kind of stuff.
The other thing you can do, by the way, because I know this is a dilemma that's causing people stress, if you promised that you wouldn't disclose a secret to somebody and you want to honor that, just send them an anonymous text. That's so.
Listen to Marion.
What?
Marion says, I can't keep my own secrets. How could I expect anyone else to do so?
Sometimes you forget too. That is a real problem.
That's right.
And by the way, you are. That is the problem with Marjorie.
I forget. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to say it, and then I do.
Lisa in a car. I have told things to Marjorie that were a secret, and she's told them back to me, thinking. She said, "You can't tell anybody because someone told me this," and I say, "I know who the someone was. It was me." Just occurred to me. I forgot about that. Lisa in a car. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Thank you. So I was actually thinking about this in relation to the conversation you just had about chat bots and AI and keeping your secrets, right? So once the information leaves your mouth, it is no longer in your brain. So whether it's on your phone, your computer, on paper, or you tell another person, is it really a secret anymore? Because now it's out there and can never be taken back. And how vital is this information? Now, with confidentiality, doctors, therapists, that's another story. That's not a secret. This is more in the lines of, gossiping secrets or something. I don't know. Where do you draw the line in terms of, is it even really a secret? And if the person telling it, why are they telling it to you?
Yeah, but can I tell you, you are totally right what you're saying, I think. However, it made me anxious just listening to you, because then the conclusion you have to reach, Lisa, is if that's the case, then you can't tell anybody anything. And how horrible is it if you have something that you know you're going to feel better about if you're able to share with somebody, but you say you can't because of Lisa in the car's reasoning. Do you know what I mean? I'm serious.
So why can't you share it?
Because you just said it's no longer a secret when you share it.
Right. So I want to know what secret is so important that it cannot be shared with more than one person.
Well, I'll give you an example. I've said some bad things about Marjorie that I don't want her to know. And I tell Jamie or Zoe or one of our... Lisa, thank you for the call.
Listen to this. This is from James Marblehead. He should be like a peace negotiator.
What do you say?
Before sharing, you must always ask, what is my intention? Does this serve the best interest of all involved?
Well,
that's very grown up and mature.
I won't be doing that anytime soon. But you know what I have done? I'm
Jim?
remembering stuff that I hadn't even thought about when this conversation started.
You forget a lot of secrets.
Occasionally, I say to somebody, not always if I'm going to share a secret, I say, I'm about to tell you something, but if you'll be uncomfortable keeping it to yourself, tell me and I won't tell you.
Oh,
that's actually a fairly grown-up
mature
position
of you.
to do.
Yeah, I've never heard you say that.
I don't think I ever have, actually. I think, no, actually, I know I have. I know I have.
Really?
Because there's certain people are going to be uncomfortable. Someone just texted secret ariat, as in secretariat.
Secretariat.
That does get you excited.
Secretariat. Belmont Stakes are coming up. The Kentucky Derby is May 1st.
May 1st?
Or is it May 2nd? Anyway,
May 2nd.
It's soon.
First is a Friday.
It's soon.
Yeah.
Then followed by the Preakness and then the Belmont Stakes.
You ever had what is that drink? Mint julep? You ever had a mint julep?
Mint julep, they're
never
great.
had a mint julep.
Yeah, they're very tasty. Lily from Newton, thank you for calling.
Hi, Lily.
Hi. A number of years ago, a close friend shared with me a secret, which I'm going to tell you because no one knows who I am.
Good.
But,
share it with us.
She confided in me that her son's father is not who he thinks he is.
Wow.
Her husband knew this, and they were fine with it.
Yeah.
And he since has passed away.
Yeah.
I'm the only other person who knows it. I encouraged her to tell the son, because I feel like I feel like he should know.
Me too.
She, however, has decided not to, and it sort of weighed heavily on me for a long time until I just have come to the conclusion that it's not my story to tell. It's not my secret to share. But I do know this, and I do know this. I know the son. He's an adult now. Anyway, it's kind
By the
of
way, I would be exactly like you. I would feel like he's entitled, but it's not my business.
But I
to
can
share
see
it.
where
Boy,
that
that's
bothers
tough.
you, because I would think every time you see this person, you think about it, and that he's laboring under this illusion. That's a good one.
That is a good one. That
Lily.
is a horrible one.
It's a horrible one.
Lily, thanks for sharing that with us. So what would you do in that circumstance? Same as
I
Lily?
think the same thing as her.
Really?
I would encourage the person to tell the truth, but I can't tell it if they don't want to, right?
You know, another, you could do it indirectly too. If you're
Yeah.
talking to the kid, you say, "By the way, your father passed away. Really good idea." And he says something. You say, "I don't mean that, father." I mean, because is that because you're not directly sharing the.
How weird is it? You got red hair, your father had black hair. You're 5'2", your father's 6'3".
And you say, "I'm not saying anything."
What's going? Yeah,
I'm not
it's
saying.
weird. It's odd, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a little odd. Do you think it's odd? Thank you. No, that woman is doing I mean, Marjorie is making light of a very serious thing, like she always does. But what am I talking? Oh, she's totally right. It should be shared, but it's not for her to do. Good for her. That's pretty grown up.
Sherry in Acton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Sherry.
I am a first-time caller.
Oh, I love that.
So
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Thank you.
And I'm a psychotherapist, and I remember years ago I was working at Cambridge Hospital, and one of our esteemed psychiatrists, Leston Havens, was talking about the effect of secrets, and he felt that there was nothing that separated people more drastically than keeping secrets. Often because, of course, they're loaded with shame, and that shame becomes a buffer to authentic intimacy, not just sexual intimacy, but intimacy of all kinds.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's a great point. But one of these stories also says, Sherry, that that there's certain things that people keep secrets about all the time, like maybe how they actually feel about their partner or their finances or their sexual behaviors or their romantic desires, where you could see people would want those things. You know what I mean? That they don't want to reveal that kind of stuff. What about that?
Well, but if you're disappointed in something in your partner, if you can be able to talk about it with that partner, you might improve your relationship, or you might decide you shouldn't spend any more time in the relationship.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was the secrets that seem to be kept on Capitol Hill around Eric Swalwell. And what would it have been like if all of that had come out a bit sooner?
That is brilliant.
That's a great point.
That is a really, really important point.
Yeah.
Sherry, by the way, I
But,
just looked up Havens. He looks like a really impressive character, by the way, died in 2011. The doctor about whom she was speaking, the psychiatrist about her. That is a really good point.
That's
by
a
the
tough one, because if you must have encountered that in your life, that people that really aren't that crazy about their spouse, you know.
Yeah, but you know who most of
You're
the
a big
most of the people
drip.
who knew the story about Swalwell were part of the club, and apparently then didn't really have a problem with that, don't you think? I mean, and they were probably doing exactly the same crap that he was doing. Do you believe? And we haven't talked much about that since it happened. That fall from grace, is that just the rapidity with which that did and should happen? And let's hope he's prosecuted, assuming these stories are accurate, because he didn't just mess around. The guy was a rapist.
Well, that's
if
the
stories
thing,
are to be believed.
that all these people probably were gossiping about it, and all these people kind of knew about it, but everybody kept it officially off the record, which I think happens a lot.
Let's take one more quick one. We got a minute. Karen in Exeter, New Hampshire. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Yeah, my secret is a secret I've carried with me for many, many, many years. I worked for a passport agency, and I discovered, because we had facial recognition, I discovered two men who were identical twins, and they don't know it.
Oh my God. So what did you do about that?
I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. Everything is private. It's really, I've been retired for a really long time, and I and I think about them. They were adopted from a foreign country by two different families, and and the adoption agency did not let either of the parents know that there were twins, and they put different birth dates. So these men will never know that they have a twin, and it's really hard.
That is torturous.
That's a tough one.
Well, it's another person doing the right thing, but it's a horrible outcome. I mean, Karen, that was really something. Thanks for sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Wow. Some real conundrums, don't you think?
Real conundrums, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your calls and texts. It was a great topic.
By the way, if anybody makes a major contribution to GBH, I'll share some of the secrets I have about Marjorie with you. But they got to be major contributions.
Major.
So,
okay, thank you for tuning in today. Check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Check out our podcast, Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to be back at the Boston Public Library with MIT economist John Gruber on 20 years of Romney care, the ACLU's Carol Rose, an Urban League panel with Rasan Hall and Mark Marley.
Mariel, he's the national president and the former mayor of New Orleans.
On their push for clean slate legislation, another edition of our series, The Long Run, segment featuring Judy Pitassi, the donated clothing captain of the Boston Athletic Association, because all those clothes got left out in Hopkinton. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Starting today, Ariana Gonzalez. Welcome back to Ariana. She worked for us for a while before. She started at BPR as an intern, actually, graduated at UMass Amherst, and back with us as a producer.
You believe she knew us and she's coming back?
I know.
That's
it's incredible,
shocking.
Jim. She has some secrets, too.
Yes.
Brad Lewis ran our YouTube stream today. Our engineer is John The Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk, starting right after us with Edgar B. Hurd III, 89.7 GBH, and the Culture Show with Jared Bowen is right after Edgar. Jared starts at 2. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. Have a great day.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, How-Tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Edmonia Lewis, Said in Stone, a retrospective of the 19th century Black woman sculptor. More at PEM.org. And My Grandma's of New England. Handcrafted coffee cakes baked locally in Boston, available for delivery for Mother's Day and Memorial Day in varieties including cinnamon walnut and apple cider donut at mygrandma.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Hurd III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, April 21st, 1926. A day like any other, and also like no other. 1 century-old copy of the Boston Post found stashed under the floorboards of a Boston home, dusted off, reconsidered. The news of the birth of a child who could maybe possibly become Queen of England. Or the story of 1 local police officer's untimely death and a granddaughter who unknowingly carried on his legacy.
All the Boston police officers used to come in to where I wait. I said, no, I really want to come on the job because my grandfather, oh yeah, we see his name on the wall, yeah.
Plus an ad for some kind of tincture made by a priest named John.
That is so disgusting.
It's our centenary special this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Libby Casey. President Trump's pick to lead the Federal Reserve insisted today that he would be independent, despite past comments from President Trump that any nominee would have to cut rates. During Kevin Warsh's appearance today before the Senate Banking Committee, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren pressed him on how he would make decisions as Fed chair.
Donald Trump has made clear that he does not want an independent Fed. In fact, he has said, and I quote, Anybody that disagrees with me will never be Fed chairman. And he's made clear that you are his sock puppet, saying last week that interest rates will drop, quote, when Kevin gets in.
Warsh told lawmakers that President Trump has never asked him to commit to rate cuts. Democrats also pushed for details on how Warsh would divest his assets, about $100 million worth, if he's confirmed. As the end of a 2-week ceasefire looms, Iran's chief negotiator says the country will, quote, not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats. Duri Buzkaren is in Van, a Turkish city near the Iranian border, and she says Iranians there share mixed feelings about the prospect that peace talks could fail.
More than half of the people NPR interviewed at a train station near the Turkey-Iran border told us they participated in widespread anti-government protests in January. But now, many say they feel numb. A woman saying she's given up on everything. She asked us not to share her name due to the risk of arrest when she returns to Iran. Some people supported the war, another woman said, but no one likes a war. Now we see the regime has survived, and if there is peace, they're going to exist in a new form, a form she thinks will be worse for the Iranian people. For NPR News, I'm Duri Buzkaren in Van, Turkey.
New Army regulations taking effect this week raise the maximum enlistment age to 42 and also drop a waiver requirement for recruits who have a single conviction for marijuana possession. Jay Price reports.
That new maximum age is up from 35. It brings the Army into line with the Navy and Air Force, which have similar limits. The changes come against a backdrop of societal shifts, including the widespread legalization of marijuana. Military branches have also eased restrictions on tattoos in recent years. The Army had suffered recent major recruiting shortfalls, but it exceeded its targets for the past 2 years, in part because it created preparatory courses to help potential recruits raise their entry test scores and drop weight to meet basic requirements. For NPR News, I'm Jay Price.
Shoppers accelerated their spending in March from February, but they spent a good chunk of their money at the gas pump. Gas prices spiked because of the U.S.-Israel war against Iran, now in its 8th week. Retail sales jumped 1.7%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. As we just heard, gas prices still up. Diesel prices have surged more than 50% since the war in Iran began late February. Researchers at Brown University have launched an energy cost tracker to follow the war's financial toll on Americans, which also found that household energy costs have climbed to more than $160 per U.S. household. Spokesperson for AAA says higher diesel prices will have a domino effect throughout the economy and will eventually lead to rising prices on the supermarket shelves. They say that even if the conflict were resolved immediately, it could still take weeks before diesel prices begin to come down, if at all. And the president of the Massachusetts College of Art and Design says the pending closure of Hampshire College is now a blow to liberal arts education. Mass Art President Mary Grant tells GBH's The Culture Show that Hampshire has a strong track record of graduates going on to start local businesses in the area. She says the closure also hits home for those who've devoted their lives to teaching.
So it's a sad day for an institution because it's not only the students who they are caring about, but it's the staff and the faculty of that institution that now have to think about what's next, because this is where I've devoted my life. I've built my family.
When it opened its doors in 1970, Hampshire was unique in not having letter grades or allowing students to create their own majors. School officials say that they were unable to overcome growing financial challenges. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, as you know, as a listener of the show, we love history here at the Curiosity Desk. And boy, have we got some history for you here today. We are calling this our April 21st centenary special. And there's a reason why we've got a centenary special for this seemingly random day in history, and it all has to do with my colleague here in the newsroom, GBH's own Craig LeMoult. Craig, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you, Edgar. It's like to
Okay,
be here.
so this is something that we started talking about, I think, before we even had a Curiosity Desk.
Absolutely. Years now we've been talking about this.
Putting this special together. Give us the story and the background as to why this date is one that we have a special for.
Right. So when I moved into a new home a few years ago in Boston, hanging on the wall was a framed newspaper front page. It was the Boston Post from April 21st, 1926. And the reason it's there is the prior homeowner had done some construction work. They'd done renovation on the home, and they opened up the floors. And in the floors, they found this newspaper. It's not quite clear why it was there. Initially, I thought maybe it was being used as insulation. I've heard that that's a thing. They think that maybe it was even just more of like a time capsule kind of situation, that's when the house was built, and they just put a newspaper in there. So they found this newspaper. It was kind of fragile. It was sort of crumbling a little bit, but they framed the front page, hung it on the wall, and left it there. When we moved into the new house, this was left for us as a gift. And when I realized that we were coming up on the 100th anniversary of this
you were like, we got to do something
we
with
gotta
this.
do it, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I started just, researching it and trying to follow all of the different stories on this front page. And I should say, even though this is just a random date in history, it is a remarkable historical document. There's so much that happened on this day that is reported on this amazing newspaper. And so that's why we decided to do it.
When we think about newspapers here in the Boston area, we think about the paper of record. Of course, the Boston Globe is what comes to mind. If not the Globe, then at least the Herald.
Right.
But this is the Boston Post. What do we know about the Boston Post as a publication?
The Boston Post at one point was the big paper. It was founded in 1831. It published until 1956. And it wasn't just a local paper. It covered all of New England. Actually, there's this one detail that they used to give this cane to every town in New England.
The golden cane. The golden cane.
Post cane.
That was the Post.
Went to the oldest person in every town. And when that person died, it went to the new. So it was actually a promotion for the newspaper, but it's the Boston Post cane that was given to the oldest person in every town. And some towns still have these
there are
today.
some kicking around, and there are some historical societies that have the cane. We've long at the Curiosity Desk been talking about someday doing a story about the Boston Post. I didn't realize it was the Boston Post.
You really should. I talked to Robert Allison. He's a professor of history at Suffolk University. Here's what he said about the Boston Post.
The Boston Post really was the best newspaper in New England, as well as the largest. And this kind of gives you a sense of that. The variety of stories that are there to draw people in with different sets of interests.
Yeah, and there's just incredible stories on this paper, and that's what we're going to talk about
So
today.
let's dive into the paper. Just for those who are listeners on the radio, this is a big, broad sheet. It's like yellowed and frayed at the edges, which you have framed here. But there's at least a dozen or more stories on this front page.
And we'll have the image on our website, gbhnews.org. Go online and see what this newspaper is all about.
So the first thing, it's not the largest headline on the front page, but it's certainly the picture that grabs your attention first. It's this picture of a woman, and then you look up at the headline, and you realize immediately, our interest in the British royal family is at least 100 years old, because the headline is Duchess of York, Mother of Girl.
Right. And, okay, so that's interesting, right?
Sure.
But why is that so interesting? Edgar, who was that girl?
The girl, the Duchess of York's daughter was eventually Queen Elizabeth II, right?
Became Queen
It's
Elizabeth.
unbelievable.
Here's a little of that story from the paper.
A baby daughter, who may someday rule the British Empire, was born early Wednesday morning to the Duke and Duchess of York. All England will join in the rejoicing Wednesday when news of the baby's arrival spreads, for a birth in the royal family always is greeted with acclaim. Of course, the rejoicing would be greater if the baby was a boy. The little girl's chances of becoming Queen of England and Empress of India and all the other things that go with the crown of the British Empire are slight. but she is now the third human being in direct line of ascension.
No, wait, that is remarkable. The fact that they point out that her chances of becoming queen are slight. I mean, they have no idea at this point.
They
right?
were
Because
slight because the king was her uncle, right? So her uncle was King Edward VII, and he wound up abdicating the throne in 1936 so that he could
His
marry
divorced lady,
Wallace Simpson, an American who was
American.
divorced. He couldn't legally marry her. So when he abdicated, Elizabeth's father, who was King George VI, became king until his death, and then she became the queen in 1952. You know, I should say, 50 years later, when she was 50 and the queen, she came here to Boston, and as part of the bicentennial, and it was a huge deal for Boston.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it is just remarkable. I mean, obviously, it's international news because it's the royal family, but the fact that nobody has any idea that this is going to be the queen, and they mention it in the story is just, it's juicy.
I love it.
All right, so another one that catches my eye, and this is a pretty small headline. It's kind of down in the corner of the paper, and so it's not the size of the headline or the beginning of the article really that captures your attention, but the fact that the word L is in it, which is to say L structures bill favored. So, is this an elevated train in Boston?
I did not know.
I did not know that either.
We had an elevated train in Boston. I'd never heard this before, but we sure did. I talked to Stephen Boucher about this. He's a transit historian. He's the author of the book Boston in Transit, Mapping the History of Public Transportation in the Hub. He's also the owner, I should say, of the store Ward Maps and MBTA Gifts in Cambridge.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Know
the place.
He described this elevated railway.
These are a story too in the air. And imagine if there's only limited stops. That was a new concept. So from Roxbury to downtown is maybe a half dozen stops, and then another half dozen from downtown up to Charlestown, even less, as opposed to a streetcar that's stopping every block along the way. So it saved people time, it saved people money, and it also kept the city growing.
But as this story highlights, not everyone was a big fan. It was this big hulking structure.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is this story about? Because it seems, it obviously captures our attention now because it's talking about something that both you and I think probably a lot of Bostonians didn't know existed. But at the time, this seems just kind of like a process story.
It kind of is at this point. In fact, at this point in 1926, this structure, the elevated railway, was only 25 years old, but already was so unpopular that people were talking about wanting to tear the thing down. Turns out this was not torn down until 1971.
Really?
Yeah, 71. When it was torn down, there was actually some neighborhoods that, were never really served as well as they were by public transportation, as they were by the L. The equivalent was never put in their place. Neighborhoods like Roxbury, Charlestown, he said, still don't have great service that were actually served back then by this elevated railway.
I mean, it is also remarkable in a way that here we are in 2026. I mean, how often do you open up the newspaper? I guess more often open up your phone or go online to read the local news, and transportation is an issue in this city. Transportation is making constant headlines in the city. And here we are in 1926 and we have a transportation story in the paper.
Always hotly debated. People really worked up about local transportation.
Okay, don't go anywhere. Much more to come on our April 21st Centennial Special. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com. And Porter Square Books, participating in Independent Bookstore Day this Saturday, April 25th. The day will include a Metro Boston indie bookstore crawl, stuffed animal portraits by children's book illustrators, and more. Info at portersquarebooks.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. It is our April 21st centenary special. I am in Studio 3 with Craig LeMoult of GBH News, the man who found a newspaper that is the front page of the Boston Post from 100 years ago today, and we are going story by story through the paper and learning about where we were 100 years ago and how where we are today is not that different from then.
That is so true.
So, sports. Big deal in Boston in 2026. Big deal in Boston in 1926.
Yep.
So we have a sports story on the front page.
Some things don't change here. The sports story on the front page of the Boston Post, April 21st, 1926, is the home opener of the Boston Braves.
Aha, not the Red Sox.
Not the Red Sox, but the Boston Braves.
I mean, National League team.
How many people do you think actually even know that we were a baseball team town back then?
I don't know that a lot of people now know that.
I think maybe I'm not giving people enough credit, but it seems to me like something that's largely been forgotten. That we had a National League team here. It was the Boston Braves.
They are still the Braves. It is the same franchise that has gone to Atlanta.
Absolutely. Via Milwaukee. They moved from here to Milwaukee, and then they moved to Atlanta.
Yes.
But in 1926, they were here. And do you know, I think you do know this, where was Braves Field in Boston?
I do not know where Braves Field in Boston was.
Do you know where Nickerson Field is at Boston University?
Yeah, I do.
That's where Braves Field was.
Really?
That's where they played.
Oh, no kidding.
That's it. And in 1926, when this newspaper was published, the Braves were not doing very well. They were not a hugely successful baseball team. I talked to this guy, Bob Brady. He is the president of the Boston Braves Historical Association.
Wait, they're local here? There is a Boston Braves
Historical Association.
That is very
there
Boston.
Should be. And he told me, although this was the home opener, it was not particularly well attended.
10,000 people showed up. Braves Field sat well over 40,000. Back in that day, people actually got dressed up to go to opening day. If they took public transportation and they took the streetcar line coming out of Park Street up Commonwealth Avenue, they would have taken a trolley that swung into Braves Field from Babcock Street.
Wow.
It actually went into the stadium.
Wait, it went into the stadium?
Yeah, you could go right in.
The trolley would go into the stadium, and then you'd get out and you're in the stadium?
That's it.
How amazing would that be today? If you could take a trolley and it would just drop you off inside
into
of
Fenway. Yeah, right?
That would be incredible.
I mean, I guess it's
Why do we not have that?
What North Station is now, right? If you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. You get dropped off right there if you're going to the basketball game, you're going to the hockey game, you get dropped off. Now, one thing I noticed is, so the headline on this is Braves open up with their jinx. Do we know what that's referring to?
I did reach out to some folks about that because when I saw that, I was like,
there's a law that says if you're a baseball team in Boston, you have to have some kind of jinx.
Some kind of a jinx. And in fact, another newspaper, it wasn't the Globe, another one that I saw also used the word jinx in a headline. And I was like, oh, is this like
the Braves jinx?
It's the Braves jinx. Is it like a thing? And I actually reached out to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and they're like, no, actually, that was just a commonly used term at the time.
Oh, really?
That just meant like they weren't doing well.
Oh.
It was. I was like, is this the Curse of the Bambino, like Braves version? But it's not.
You reached out to the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's the kind of work you put into this. That's incredible. I love that.
Over-reported
now,
this story.
Speaking of reporting on this, I looked into this a little bit because the subhead on this is that their home opener was against the Phillies. Now, I am a Philadelphia Phillies fan, right? And so worth noting, the Braves might have not been doing well, but do you know what the single losingest franchise in the history of professional sports is?
I don't.
The Philadelphia Phillies. They have, baseball, they play 162 games, right? But the Phillies have lost more games than any other professional sports franchise.
In a single season
or
overall?
Just overall.
Okay.
More than 11,400 games they have lost over the years.
One of the things that this guy, Bob Brady from the Historical Association told me was at the end of the Braves' tenure here, their final season, I don't remember the exact number, but like the wins were in the double digits and the losses were in the triple digits. I mean, they had this remarkably bad team. And you know who was on that team?
Who?
Babe Ruth was on that team. He ended his career playing for the Boston Braves.
As for this game on the 21st of April, 1926, do you know who won?
It was the Braves, actually.
2-1.
Yeah,
they
you
beat
see.
the Phillies.
You did do your research on this one.
I did.
You know, an interesting note here, 1926, by the way, is the first year that the Boston Red Sox games were broadcast on the radio.
Oh, neat.
But the Braves games were actually broadcast the year before. This was the second season. I did try to find...
Did you try to find some
there's
archival
no
audio?
archival tape. I think it was actually BZ has, but they don't have that tape anymore, unfortunately.
All right, moving on. Speaking of radio, there's a headline which really caught my attention, and I was like, wait, can that be right? Which is, check by radio is honored. So this is April of 1926, and am I right in assuming what this is saying is somebody wired a check? They sent a wired check by radio?
In a way, but wired isn't really the right word because there's no wire involved. This is sent by radio. The subhead is first to be sent across ocean via air. Here's a bit of that story.
For the first time in the history of banking, a check has been transmitted photographically across the ocean by wireless and will be duly honored if there are no legal impediments.
So the check was sent from England to a bank in New York. And it is crazy if you think about it. I mean, today, that kind of thing...
No, today it's like
no big deal, right?
But
because we send video over the air, right? But this was the first, and it was kind of a pivotal moment in technology. And it's sort of small thing. I mean, it's the bottom right-hand corner of the story. It's not a huge story.
Well, they don't know. They don't know that it's going to be a big deal.
That's
I mean, they kind of do, but they don't, right?
It's a first, but I don't think they necessarily realize just what a pivotal moment this is. What's really amazing to me is to think that this is just 23 years after Marconi's first two-way transatlantic radio transmission from Wellfleet, of course, and the King.
Yeah.
So 23 years before, that was just Morse code, right?
Yeah.
Dots and dashes. And if you think about it, this is not that long after that radio is being used to transmit money over the ocean. Again, here's historian Robert Allison of Suffolk University.
This is an extraordinary moment in history where we are connecting through wireless. And what else can we do with this? Well, we can broadcast Red Sox games and Braves games. We can connect in ways that had been impossible, even 20 years earlier. It would have been thought crazy that you could do something like this. And today we take it for granted.
Totally.
It's
totally right.
The world is sort of about to change, and I think they don't quite realize just how important this is. One of the things that really struck me about this article is not in the headline, it's not even in the subhead. It's buried lower down in the story.
And what's that?
Well, the money transmission was the big headline. Lower down in the article, it says the message also was, there was the first ever image that was sent. Separate from the check, the first ever image was sent. In addition to the check. And that first image came from U.S. Ambassador to Britain, Alison B. Houghton, who sent a message to the rector at his high school, which was St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire.
What?
So I reached out, of course, to St. Paul's, and I talked to the school's archivist, whose name is Deanna Parsi, and she showed me the image, which is framed and hanging on the wall of their archives.
What?
Here's what she said.
This is a reproduction of the first message that was sent by wireless across the Atlantic. And it says, "This is the first message reproduced by wireless across the Atlantic. May I send it to you and to the school with my best wishes, from Hope."
This is the image that she sent me.
So for those of you who can't see this, Craig is now handing me a printout of this image. Wow, so it's
this
his
will be
handwriting.
on gbhnews.org as well. To me, it wasn't until seeing this image that it really kind of clicked for me. This is kind of like a fax in a way.
Yes.
It's a handwritten note.
It's a wireless fax. It's not over wire. This is much more like me taking a picture with my cell phone and sending it to your cell phone. That's what they're doing here in 1926. That's crazy.
And this is the very first image, and it was this guy sent it to his high school, to the rector at his high school. He's like, "Hey, here's a note. It's the first one."
Such a strange choice. Like, it's just like the rector at his high school.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right. So another headline that you can't help but love, and certainly out of context, I think if I think about it, I probably understand what it's talking about, but it just says, wets have fiery duel with dries, which is
the wets and the
the
dries.
wets and the dries.
This is 1926, and therefore we are roughly halfway through Prohibition.
Indeed.
So here's a little bit of that article.
Stormy scenes and some startling revelations regarding dry law enforcement mark the sessions today of the Senate Prohibition Committee. As the Dries approached the conclusion of the presentation of their case, there was a frequent outcropping of an undersurface bitterness with Senator Reed, Democrat, Missouri, the one wet on the Committee of Five, standing as the central figure in the controversy.
I want to get back to calling people wets and dries. Honestly, I mean that is great, and also I love
Good
you
luck
probably
finding a dry.
Probably recognize our colleague Henry Santoro's voice there. Perfect choice for the wets and the dries article. So, so Prohibition, like kind of a hotly debated thing right here.
Yeah, as you can hear in this story, not at all something that everybody agrees upon. It's hotly debated. I talked to Stephanie Shoro. She's the author of several books on Boston history. Here's what she had to say about this moment in history.
Because this time, 1926, 6 years into Prohibition, and people were starting to realize it wasn't working out exactly the way they thought it would. In fact, there was beginning to be a huge pushback against Prohibition because what you saw was the growth of organized crime to support people's habits in terms of liquor.
And their habits were sizable. I'm
so surprised.
It is estimated that Boston had 4,000 speakeasies.
4,000?
Notably compared to 1,000 bars before Prohibition.
So it was good for Prohibition was good for the liquor business.
It was pretty good. And I think you didn't know necessarily where the speakeasies were. I mean, by design, they were supposed to be hidden.
Yeah.
Some places were just, nightclubs that if you knew somebody, if you knew the right words to say, if you knew who to ask, you could get yourself
Secret
a drink.
knock,
Some of them were in
whatever it is.
people's houses. There's a way to get a drink. But this is being, hotly debated and not really that popular in this area. With some it is. I should say, fun detail that I learned talking to Stephanie Sharo. She told me about this Quincy guy named Delsavar King.
It's a great name.
It's a great name. Nobody names their kid Delsavar.
I've never heard of a Delsavar.
Nobody names their kid Edgar anymore.
That's true.
But he was this really ardent dry.
An ardent dry.
And he was really angry about all these people breaking the law. So he wanted there to be a word for what these people were. He wanted like kind of a dirty word. What are we going to call these people? Right? So he had a contest to come up with a word for these people who were breaking the law by drinking alcohol illegally. Here's Stephanie Shoro again.
And dozens of people, maybe hundreds, sent in words for this contest. And I think the winner got some money. The winning word was scofflaw. Scofflaw. That's where that word came from.
That's where we got the word scofflaw.
It was just whole cloth invented because of Delsavar King?
He had a contest, and that was the winning word.
That is unbelievable.
That's how new words come sometimes, by contest. Now, I should say, the students at Harvard had their own contest.
Okay.
For a word for dries. This was there.
So they wanted a derogatory term for the dries.
Yes.
Okay.
And the winning word, which unfortunately didn't catch on quite as much as scofflaw, was spigot bigot.
Spigot bigot.
Spigot bigot.
That's really good, actually.
So that's what's going on at this moment. 1926, Prohibition, of course, would be repealed 7 years later, 7 years after this came out, 1933, with the passage of the 21st Amendment.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are in studio with GBH's Craig LeMoult. It is our April 21st centenary special. We are going through the headlines and stories on the front page of the Boston Post 100 years ago today, April 26th, 1926. it's not just stories. Newspapers once sold advertising. Before there was Google selling all of the advertising,
That's right.
the papers were kept in business, not just because you had to shell out a dime or whatever it was for your paper, but also advertising. And there's advertising on this paper as well.
And I should to your point about supporting the business model. I noticed in the upper right-hand corner of the Boston Post, it says how much the newspaper cost.
How much did it cost?
What do you think? What's your guess?
1926, a dime.
It's 2 cents.
2 cents.
It was 2 cents. So I mean, granted, 2 cents went further back then than it does now. But clearly, the advertising must have played a role in supporting the newspaper as well. And there's a number of different kinds of businesses that
who is advertising on the paper?
Including some nightclubs. There's several nightclubs here. There's one you'll see on there called Waldron's 7-Eleven Casino, which was, I found out, in Scully Square. Now, Edgar, I'm guessing...
I do.
I think many people... I always wondered, where was Scully Square?
Yeah.
And I was always wondering about this because as the Kingston Trio sang...
Yes.
Charlie's wife went down to the Scully Square station every day at 2:15.
That is true.
And through the open window, she threw Charlie a sandwich as the train came rumbling through. Where's Scully Square, right?
That is essentially City Hall Plaza. I mean, controversial moment in Boston history, and one I'm sure worth taking on here on the Curiosity Desk in a future episode, because it's a crazy story, but essentially, it was decided that this entire neighborhood was going to be leveled so that we could have City Hall and City Hall Plaza and that whole area of government in the city. So yeah,
an area of Boston which is still controversial today.
Yeah, indeed.
In that it's not necessarily the most beautiful part of the city, but it apparently was pretty beautiful in some ways. I talked to a guy named David Crew. He's the author of a book about Scully Square. And he described it as looking at the time a lot like what we see now in the North End, where it's sort of where it's crowded and there's these winding little passageways and alleys and things like that. That's what Scully Square looked like at the time. Here's what he said.
That was what Scully Square was, only instead of residences, it was nightclubs, burlesque houses, boxing gyms, tattoo parlors, dentists, photographers, bowling alleys. It was the place where you went to have a good time.
I mean, I want to hang out there.
It does,
I want
with the
that
exception
neighborhood.
of the
Why
dentists?
can't we have that neighborhood today?
I feel like
the dentist. Well, you need that because of the boxing ring. You get your teeth knocked out.
Right
you
next
walk over
door.
to the dentist, and then you take the edge off by taking in a show at the nightclub.
It sounds like a pretty cool
full service square
part of town.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it doesn't exist anymore. It was torn down and made. One of the other things that's interesting about this advertisement for Waldron's 7-Eleven Casino.
Well, I just think the fact that it's called 7-Eleven is interesting, which means that obviously predates the notion of something being called 7-Eleven predates the convenience store 7-Eleven.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it meant like good luck. It was like a gambling sort of thing.
Maybe it's I don't play craps, but maybe 7-Eleven is something you want to roll in craps. I don't know.
And the word casino in this context does not mean like a gaming casino. It's just sort of like it's a place.
Yeah,
that
it's a way that it's laid out, like a casino. Yeah,
I think so.
See that today.
And it's advertising a midnight show.
Which would not have liquor because the dries were winning at this point.
Well,
unless it was the speakeasy part.
I think if you knew, maybe who to talk to. But one of the things it advertises is an all-colored burlesque. That's what the advertisement says. If you look in the tiny writing here, all-colored burlesque. And I asked David Crew about that.
The idea that they would advertise all-colored reviews reflects the fact that in many theaters, you had minstrel shows, which were performed by white men and women who would blacken up their faces and do these shows, basically mimicking black performers.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at a newspaper like this from 100 years ago, there's some stuff in there. Stuff we're not proud of in our history, and Indeed. It's a couple words on this page, but it really, I think, reflects what was happening at that moment and just the racist history that we had here in Boston and around the country.
And one of the reasons why you do need to look back at history and say, hey, we were not always our best selves, and it happened. You got to admit, it happened. That's how it was.
Yep, and here it is in an advertisement. There's also an ad here for another club called Lido Venice, which is advertised as the smart place to dine and dance. It's the opening night of this club. Incidentally, the location of Lido Venice is now the Charles Playhouse.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the buildings, a lot of these buildings, with the exception of Scully Square, are still there. There's another ad for a gas station here where it says, "Mr. and Mrs. Motorist, there's some free gas for you in this tank," and a little bit
free
of
gas.
So, which sounds pretty good. How much do you think gas was in 1926?
Well, I'm going to say definitely cheaper than it is right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, the price of gas, something in the headlines. I don't know, 20 cents a gallon.
23 cents
Okay.
a gallon. It was the price in 1926.
All right. Stay with us. We've got more of our April 21st centenary special with Craig LeMoult here on the Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. This is the Curiosity Desk. Don't go away.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Windhorse Counseling in Concord, where their counselors collaborate with clients of all ages and are committed to helping individuals find growth and balance. More about their team at windhorsecounseling.net.
And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. This is our April 21st centenary special. I am in studio with GBH's Craig LeMoult. We are going over the headlines and stories on a Boston Post newspaper from this day, April 26th, in 1926. Well, disasters, it seems, have always made headlines. Here we are, April of 1926, 100 years ago, and a big headline on this paper, 3 die in submarine explosion.
Yeah, and the subhead here, 2 more dying and 5 critically injured. Here's a little from that story.
3 members of the crew of 40 men on the submarine S-49, sister ship of the ill-fated S-51, which was sunk last September with a loss of 33 lives, died tonight in the submarine base hospital from injuries received when a battery exploded today.
Yeah, this is not a new thing. Apparently, these battery explosions kind of kept happening. There have been a number of submarine explosions as a result of a buildup of hydrogen gas that happens with the batteries in these submarines at the time. I talked to Megan Rathbun. She's the managing director and curator of the Submarine Force Museum in Groton and New London, Connecticut. And she told me that near the end of World War I, the U.S. ordered something like 58 submarines to be developed. There was this huge order of submarines that happened back then. But then, as the war came to a close, the U.S. signed what's called the Washington Naval Treaty, which limited warship construction. Here's what she said.
Now, we continue to build these submarines that have been ordered. However, the funding to operate them and the funding to retrofit them and to fix any safety problems or any engineering problems that came up in their design process was really scaled back. The money just wasn't there to fix a lot of these problems. One of these problems happened to be the batteries.
They kept exploding like this.
Yeah.
There was a number of explosions like this that happened after this as well. And she said basically a new era started in 1954 with the commissioning of the first nuclear sub, which was the USS Nautilus, which is actually at their museum. And that did not have this same issue.
It's also kind of, sort of remarkable, again, 100 years ago, but, thinking about, this is just post-World War I, talking about submarines, weapons of war. Here we are, 100 years later, currently at war.
Yeah, absolutely. And she talked about, especially with the submarines, how important submarines wound up actually being in World War II. That they were a big part of the military action that happened in World War II. And but I think in this moment, there's so much happening in terms of the technology.
Yeah.
We're really at a moment of transition here, and to look back and see in this newspaper what's happening with technology, with radio, with the submarines. a lot of advancement is still to come, and a lot of it is happening at that moment. And I don't know, the technology aspect of it always is fascinating to me when I stare at this newspaper.
In particular, because it's like, you know, we're experiencing this right now. If you think about something like AI, and there's headlines all over the place around AI, and you sort of don't know which ones of those are the real important breakthrough, right? Because it's happening and you're in the moment and it's happening with you. But when you look back on it and see where we are 100 years later, you can look and say, oh wait, that one was really important. You didn't even know it while it was happening.
Yeah, and we don't know 100 years from now what's going to be. And we should remind people, like, the reason we're even talking about this is just a random newspaper that was found in the floor of my home by a previous homeowner. It's hanging on my wall, and that's why we're looking at this. There's nothing special about this day. It's just a random date in history.
So when we think about this date in history, when this paper was published, there is one headline on this paper which they have clearly deemed this is the story of this day. It is a headline that is in bold and is larger than anything else on this paper, and it says, "Dragnet is out for armed boys."
Yeah, so this is an incredible story about these teenagers. They were 17 years old. It's actually interesting, the story. They keep referring to them as boys. Even deeper in the story, they talk about how handsome they were. It's sort of it's funny how they're characterized, but they were responsible for killing a Boston police patrolman named Frank Comeau. Here's a little of that story.
Two boys, known to be formidably armed, for whom the police of Dedham, Boston, and other places searched all day yesterday, have eluded detection so far. They are wanted for questioning in connection with the murder of Patrolman Frank J. Comeau of Boston, concerning which young Stanley Toothaker of 12 Bartlett Terrace, Roxbury, has made what he claims is a complete confession.
So what Toothaker said to the police is that he and these two other 17-year-olds, a guy named Albert Deschon and Robert Sambursky, they basically had formed this little gang, and they were breaking into houses and stealing things. And they've been doing it for a while. The police are searching for a cache of stolen things. And they also are looking for these two 17-year-olds. And what Toothaker said was that the three of them were sitting in a car. It was a stolen car. And I guess it had stalled out. And so they were just like sitting in this stalled out car when this officer, Patrolman Comeau, approached them, and he asked them whose car it was, and he asked them for a license. And then he said they were under arrest, and one of them pulled out a gun. And there was some kind of a struggle, and in that struggle, Comeau was shot. Wow. About 2 months after this, I should say, Albert Deschon was found guilty of manslaughter. And the other two 17-year-olds were acquitted in that killing. So, you know, we're looking at this newspaper, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, okay, what am I going to do to examine this story and to learn a little bit more about it? So the first call I made was to the Boston Police Department.
Sure.
And I asked them, do you happen to know anybody in Patrolman Comeau's family? And not only do they know his granddaughter, whose name is Annie Corcoran, is a retired Boston police officer.
Really? So the officer who was killed here, his granddaughter,
who never met him because
he died young.
He died very young, but he had two children when he was killed, two very young children. Much later, his granddaughter would go on to become a Boston police officer. And so I interviewed her. She came here to GBH, and we talked about her story and her grandfather's story. And she began by showing me a framed photograph of her grandfather.
Let's see. This is the dress uniform that he was wearing. So as you can tell, the picture is very old.
Wow.
Yeah. His family emigrated from France to Canada. My Nana was Irish and emigrated to Boston from Ireland, and they met up in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Was he a Boston police officer yet?
No, he was not. No. He didn't become... He was only a Boston police officer for a couple of years before he was shot and killed.
And this photograph here, where did your grandmother have it?
She kept it always right in front of her. If we were in the parlor, she had it on the television. And then at night, she took it to her bedroom with her. So I would always ask, what's that funny hat he's wearing? What's that funny uniform he's wearing? So it would only come out in little bits and pieces.
that he was a policeman. He was very proud to be a policeman. He was so happy the day he became a policeman. He loved his job. That's all you'd get out of her. Well, where is he, Nana? He's in heaven. My mom was 3 when her dad died, and my auntie was 1. And I believe the widow's pension was $14 a month after she lost her husband. And they lived in a triple-decker in Dorchester. She couldn't pay the rent and keep food on the table with 2 babies, so she took in laundry from the neighbors, and I never saw anybody work harder in my life.
So how old were you when you found out what happened to him?
When I tried to get on the Boston Police Department.
What?
Well, no, my mom knew.
Yeah.
My mom told me, but the story from my Nana never wanted to talk about it. And so as I grew and got older, I had waitressing jobs, and all the Boston police officers used to come in to where I waitressed. And I would talk to them all. And they would say, hey, kid, you should come on the job. You should come on the job. I said, no, I really want to come on the job because my grandfather, oh, yeah, we see his name on the wall. Yeah. You should come on. So after I got out of college, at the age of 21, I took the test to get on the police department. And when my mother told my Nana, her head nearly exploded. She was like, no. You're not going to do that.
How long had you been thinking? You said when you saw this as a child, you thought about being a police officer.
Oh, and I thought about it as a child. When she kept saying that he was so, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a job that you loved and that you were proud to do? It sounded like a perfect combination, and then she'd say he used to love to help people. Frank always wanted to help people. And then I thought, that's really cool, too. Back then, when you took the civil service exam, well, white females were not minorities. So every time I took the test, I got 100, but I was on the same list as white males who had preference points from Vietnam, as they should have. So they all had scores over 100. So I took the test for 10 years, getting 100 every time before I got on, but I was 31 by the time I got on.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so Nana thought I was going to forget all about that career because I had been working at the phone company for 10 years, and I hated it. And then when I finally got on the police department, she cried, and my Nana never cried. She cried, and she said, you have to promise me you never stop a car. And I said, why do I never stop a car? Because that's what killed your grandfather.
Corcoran told me she lied to her grandmother. In fact, in her years as a Boston police officer, her job involved stopping cars all the time. And she is now retired from the Boston Police Department after almost 32 years of service.
That is unbelievable and incredibly poignant.
Yeah, she was amazing. And that story about her grandfather really inspired her decision, as she said. And I think the thing I really loved about doing that interview and thinking about Officer Camo was that you see a story like this, and you don't necessarily think about the lives that are left behind, how difficult the life of his widow was, trying to take care of these children, and $14 a month. She's doing her neighbor's laundry. And then how it ripples even beyond that down the generations to inspire, his granddaughter as well. I think, there's a human tragedy here, and we don't always get the chance to really to take the long view about what the impact is. And so I really appreciated speaking to Annie Corcoran.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're in studio with GBH's Craig LeMoult. This is our April 21st centenary special. We're going over the headlines and stories in a 100-year-old newspaper, the Boston Post, April 21st, 1926. Now, we began talking about a picture and a headline of the Duchess of York, mother of girl. That is the birth of Elizabeth, who would become Elizabeth II, Queen of England. The other picture that is of equal size on this front page, And in the category of the more things change, the more they stay the same, we have a very cute little dog, and we have a little dog story dominating the headlines. Now, Craig, here on the Curiosity Desk, in fact, just weeks ago,
yes,
we did an interview with a man whose dog fell down a hole 12 feet and got rescued. It was a feel-good story. It made headlines all over the world. And what have we here?
100 years ago, dog falls 50 feet into mud, unhurt.
There we go.
Subhead pulled out of pit by fire chief with rope and taken to police station for a bath and feed. You know, when I first looked at this, I thought, why is this story taking up an enormous amount of real estate on the front page? It's bigger than the story about the first transatlantic,
it's much
check
bigger.
being sent by.
It's
bigger than the story about prohibition. There's this big picture of a dog, and then this dog fell into a sinkhole. It was all over the international, and it was on the Curiosity Desk right here. And I was like, you know what? I guess we still love this story like this. If the dog wasn't rescued. Yep. There's no way this is a big story.
But it's a huge feel-good story. And what's amazing is it's a reminder that the newspaper, we use the newspaper now. We're looking back on this and saying, like, it's a record of the time. But in the time, it is just the record of the day. It's the news of the day. And in 1926, as it is in 2026, people want a feel-good story. And the idea that a dog fell 50 feet and then got dragged up and went and got a bath at the firehouse is like, that's just a feel-good story.
There's a lot of bad news on here. We haven't even mentioned that there was a fire in Chelsea. There's the submarine explosion. Just like, give us something nice.
Yeah.
Give us a picture of a cute dog and tell me the cute dog is okay. There it is on the front page of the Boston Post.
We loved it then, we love it now. Before I let you go, there's one more advertisement on this paper that I really want to talk about because it's remarkable. It's something called Father John's Medicine. What is Father John's Medicine?
This is the tiniest thing in the whole paper.
I know, but it's so good.
Father John's Medicine is a safe tonic for old and young, no drugs. So, of course, I look up Father John's Medicine. It is made by a company, or it was made by a company in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Okay, so it's a local tonic.
Named after a real priest in Lowell, whose name was Father John O'Brien.
Amazing.
Father John O'Brien was sick at one point, and he went to the pharmacy, and they made him this medicine, and it really worked. And he would go around and visit the sick, and he would tell everybody, you got to try this stuff. And so people started showing up at the pharmacy asking for Father John's Medicine. So they made it into a company. They started making this stuff. It's an example of what's called a patent medicine. Although the company would dispute that. And I'll explain why in a moment. But first of all of the records for this company are at UMass Lowell in their archives.
What?
So I talked, of course, with the archivist there, Carissa Coleus. She's the archivist at the Center for Lowell History at UMass Lowell. Here's what she said.
Most patent medicines would have things like cocaine, heroin, and other strong drugs in them, including also alcohol. And Father John's Medicine is really different in that it's one of the only patent medicines that had none of those things in them. They actually always would make a point to say that they were free of alcohol and dangerous drugs.
What it is mostly cod liver oil with licorice flavoring.
Cod and licorice.
So
a classic combo.
The company left Lowell, but Father John's Medicine is still being made.
No, it is not.
And I have a surprise for you, Edgar.
Oh, no. This is not happening right now.
This is absolutely...
Wait, are you kidding me?
Father John's Medicine.
So for those who can't see, Craig right now is pulling out a bottle.
Here's your cup.
Of Father John's Medicine. So we have a box which is like some sort of bright salmon. And we've got a bottle here of Father John's Medicine for temporary relief of coughs due to colds.
Again, this is cod liver oil flavored like licorice.
I'm so excited for this.
Edgar's shaking it up.
You got for all of us. It says to
shake
shake it before using. One of the things I find remarkable here is, again, when we think about relevance for today, I mean, the health and wellness space right now, the supplement market, all of that stuff that's out there on social media where people have varying degrees of ideas about whether or not this stuff works. It was happening then and it's happening now. All right, you going to share some of this Father's Johns with me?
All right,
All right,
give me a minute
in a minute here,
I'm gonna
Craig.
pour it in front of the microphone. Let's see if we can hear that.
Yeah, we will toast to it. But before we toast and say goodbye,
it's thicker than I
it is
thought it would
way
be.
thicker than I thought it was going to be. Good God, this looks gross. No, seriously, before we toast and say goodbye on this centennial special, I just wonder, I mean, you put a lot of work in here. You learned a lot, obviously, about all of these stories, but I'm going to ask you what you learned doing this, but I don't mean what did you learn about this stuff, which it's very clear that you did, but what else, if anything, did you learn going through the exercise of just finding out more about all of these stories on a random newspaper that you found on your wall?
Yeah, I mean, I walk past this thing every day. It's right by my front door. And every time I stop and I look at it, I discover something new about it. I mean, I've been reading it for years now, and there's still stuff that I hadn't even noticed before. And, you know, I think it really does point to the fact that at any given moment in history, I think, there are all these different things happening, and, you know, it's our job to report them, right?
That's what we do.
We do as the best job that we can do in reporting them. We can't get to everything, but, like, at any given moment in time, there's all of these different things that are happening, and each of them shapes what comes in the future. So to have this opportunity just to look back at a random day 100 years ago and see these stories and to follow them and where some of them went and why some of them happened, it was a privilege. It was fun to do it, and I think, you know, we don't necessarily always get that long view, and I think there's real value to that.
Well, Craig, cheers to you.
Cheers.
Thanks for following your curiosity. Here's to Father John.
Father John. Oh, God.
Do you know what it tastes like? It tastes like cod liver oil with licorice flavoring.
That is so
disgusting.
Oh, my God, is that foul? Hopefully we're not going to get sued by the Father John's company, but...
Well, that's it for the Curiosity Desk, folks. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. And for today, April 21st, 2026, Craig LeMoult. Just one more enormous thank you to Craig for all of his reporting and work on this special hour. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. By the way, Patty Daniels will, of course, still be in our hearts on April 21st, 2126. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. If you can't wait that long, check out the podcast version of our show wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Boston Speaker Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, war photographer Lindsay Addario, and former U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns. bostonspeakers.org.
An invisible force is causing chaos around the globe. Now, scientists are racing to figure out how to predict these strange weather events that sink ships and down planes. Nova, rain bombs. Tomorrow at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, black performers were once forced to work inside America's ugliest stereotypes, fighting their way through minstrelsy and racist caricature before they could begin to claim comedy on their own terms. Decades later, shows like In Living Color, Living Single, and A Different World helped turn black television comedy into a cultural force. In the new book, Black Out Loud, PBS NewsHour anchor Geoff Bennett traces that long transformation. Then it's one ballroom battle after another. The fight over President Trump's White House extreme makeover is also a fight over the meaning of the White House itself, its history, its resonance, and who has actual ownership. Alison Hoagland, a National Trust for Historic Preservation board member, joins us from the center of the legal fight over the demolished East Wing and the proposed ballroom rising in its place. And for 40 years, the MIT List Visual Arts Center has brought contemporary art into the heart of a campus better known for science and engineering. Now, as it marks that anniversary, Director Paul Ha joins us to reflect on the museum's past and future. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Black comedians have long done double duty in American culture, delivering the laughs while also landing pointed commentary. In his new book, Black Out Loud, Geoff Bennett traces that history from vaudeville through the 1970s and daring comedians like Dick Gregory and Richard Pryor, then on to what he describes as a golden age of black comedy in the 1990s. That's when touchstone shows like A Different World, Living Single, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air were all must-see TV, disrupted television norms, and reshaped power dynamics in Hollywood. Most notably in the way Keenan Ivory Wayans presided over the groundbreaking sketch comedy show In Living Color.
Black innovators have often failed to get the credit due them for their brilliant work in the business world. In 1975, entrepreneur Kelvin Thompson was employed at a gas station in Detroit. He was working one sunny afternoon when a customer drove up in a big blue sedan.
Hey, buddy, can I get a little gas over here?
Thompson had a moment of inspiration and said to the customer,
"Get it your damn self."
So today we salute Kelvin Thompson, inventor of the self-service gas station. I'm David Allen Greer, and this has been another great moment in Black history.
Geoff Bennett is the co-anchor and co-managing editor of PBS NewsHour. Geoff, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here. Oh, it seems like you're a little bit muted. We'll try to fix that on our end. But again, Geoff Bennett, PBS NewsHour co-anchor, is joining us about his book, Black Out Loud. Can we hear you now?
I think we're good now.
We are
It's
good.
great to be with you, Jared. Thanks so much.
Of course. Well, tell me about for you. I know that you, as you say in the prologue, you grew up watching so many of these shows in the 1990s. What was the genesis for you to go back and have this near century-long exploration of comedy?
Yeah, the book really started with a simple question, and it was, what was it about the 1990s where you had so many different versions and visions of Black life on the air at the same time? And the simultaneity is key because, as it turned out, as I was doing this research, what it meant was that no one show had to bear the burden, bear the responsibility of representing the entirety of the Black experience. I say that with air quotes because, of course, no one show, no one creative product can do that. And yet in the 1990s, what we saw were so many different versions of Black life on television. And the question I kept coming back to was, how did that happen? I've worked in television, I've worked in media long enough to know there are no coincidences. And so the book really sought to answer that question. And what I realized was, as a journalist, I couldn't tell the stories of 90s sitcoms, of that resurgence, that real renaissance, without starting at the very beginning. And of course, the beginning of comedic performance, Black comedic performance in this country, is minstrelsy. So the book focuses primarily on the 90s, but then charts its way back to the beginning of that era.
Well, we'll go back there in a moment, but to wade into the question that you just posed, why, what happened, what was the alchemy in the cultural landscape that made for all of these shows to prosper in the 1990s, what did you begin to understand?
Alchemy is a great word for it. And what I learned from interviewing Barry Diller, the media titan who founded the Fox Broadcasting Network, what he told me was that when he launched Fox, when he surveyed the primetime landscape, what he said was that what CBS, NBC, and ABC were putting on the air were virtually indistinguishable in terms of sitcoms. And he knew that Fox had to be different. It had to be bold. It had to be brash. He wanted it to skew younger. He also knew that to get a foothold as a new TV network, it was going to be centered primarily in urban areas, LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, so on. And so that meant that the kind of programs that were going to get greenlit for a Fox broadcast network, this new entry into primetime sitcoms, was going to look and feel very different. And in fact, the first pilot that got greenlit was a show called Not the Cosby Show, because by this time, word had gone out in Hollywood that this is what Barry Diller and his team were looking for. And if you're an enterprising producer, you're not going to make it difficult for a network exec to greenlight your show. So the title of this show, the working title of this show, was a little on the nose, but it ultimately became Married with Children. And people of a certain age will remember that show for being the subversive, family-centered sitcom that it was. And when that show found success, then you got The Simpsons and Cops. And that ultimately is the formula that allowed for a Keenen Ivory Wayans to have the access, the agency, the funding, really, to put his entire funny family on television and then create a pipeline, a talent pipeline that would funnel into that show. Because at the time, sketch comedy, if you were wanting to do sketch comedy on television, really the only place you could do that was SNL. And what In Living Color was looking for was very different. So Keenen Ivory Wayans had to go out and find David Alan Grier and Tommy Davidson and Jim Carrey. In fact, David Spade auditioned, I learned, for In Living Color. And after he learned of Jim Carrey's audition, said, why was I even called? Why did you even call me in for an audition? Because what I do is not what Jim Carrey can do. And these are all household names, to include Rosie Perez and Jennifer Lopez and Carrie Ann Inaba, who were the Fly Girls. All of that started with the vision of a Keenen Ivory Wayans.
Well, you and I are similar in age, so I remember being this little kid, staying up a little bit past my bedtime to be able to watch In Living Color, which I think came on a little bit later, if I'm remembering correctly. And Married with Children was already pretty. It was hard to get permission to watch that show.
Yeah.
But what was it about what we saw with the Wayans family and that coterie of stars that came, soon to be stars that came in with them, that just changed our notions of what comedy could be?
It's such a great question. I remember watching it. I was around 10 or 11 at the time. And just thinking, I can't believe they're getting away with this on TV. I mean, so many of the sketches, David Alan Grier makes the point now that that show could not air on television now, in large part because people are so quick to be offended. It's much easier to take issue with it and post things on social media. Back then, if you saw one of the sketches and took issue with it, first of all, you'd have to figure out where to send your letter of complaint and hope that someone on the receiving end would even reply to you. So that is a fundamental difference. But it was subversive, it was bold, it was brash, but it was also specific and authentic. And the thing that In Living Color did was it really kicked open the doors for so many of those sitcoms that followed. I would argue Black-centered sitcoms and sketch comedy and beyond. Because what it proved was that you could be specific, you could be authentic, you could speak to a certain slice of American life, and yet you could find success there. There was a universality, there was a broad appeal. And of course, all these sitcoms I mentioned in the book, Black Out Loud, yes, they were Black-specific shows. They had Black casts. In many cases, they had Black showrunners and producers. But they were top-rated, which meant that the entire country was watching them. You know, I did this book tour, and it was funny having to explain to some of the younger folks who would come out to the book tour that, you know, there was once upon a time when people would, as a family, sit down in the living room in front of the television and spend, I don't know, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours watching TV. And it wasn't just one family, it was tens of millions of families that were doing the same thing. And you would talk about it the next day at work or on the playground, whatever. The point being that there was a monoculture. We had shared reference points. There were things that we were watching together that we could talk about. And one of the reasons why these shows were so important is that for people who, you know, happen to be Black or happen to live in the cities like Brooklyn or Detroit, where Living Single or where Martin were based, you saw versions of what you knew to be true reflected, and so these shows were mirrors. And for everybody else, these shows were windows into lives, into jokes, into experiences that they might not otherwise have encountered. And so the other main takeaway here is that it really kind of softened the distance between people, these shows, and that's why I think they're so culturally important and resonant.
I'm speaking with Geoff Bennett, co-anchor, of course, of the PBS NewsHour and author of the new book, Black Out Loud. You just mentioned Living Single. Here's a clip from season 1 of Living Single in 1993. So this is well before Friends, a similar show that would come after, in which the girls get ready for a night out on the town.
It's been a while since we've been out clubbing, and for free, shoot, I'm gonna make the most out of this.
Remember how we used to give fake names to the guys who would try to talk to us? I was Alexis. I was Dominique, right? Ooh, tonight I'll be Shaquan. Yes. That suits me, yes.
All right. I am ready to go. I got the slamming outfit on and my ponytail. See what I'm saying? Whip action. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, we all look good tonight, yes.
So as we were also talking about, this is where you had a coterie of Black creatives running the show behind the scenes as well. So, of course, we'd seen the depiction of Black families before, but it wasn't necessarily the Black creatives who were in charge. How did this begin to change the cycle when there was full ownership of these stories?
It was a rare convergence. I mentioned earlier how this wasn't a coincidence. It really was a convergence of talent and timing and cultural urgency. And the talent part of this is key because you had so many producers and comedians and actors who were really just waiting in the wings for their shot. And so when Fox was intentional about greenlighting these shows and found success, of course, this is true in Hollywood and everywhere else, success begets success. And that opens the door for other storytellers to come forward. And so you mentioned Living Single. The producer who created that show, named Yvette Lee Bowser, got her professional start in the writer's room of A Different World alongside Debbie Allen. And Queen Latifah and Kim Coles had development deals with Fox. And Fox was pairing them with writers who really weren't aligned with the visions of those two women. And they were getting scripts that didn't quite work to the point where, as I was told, their development deals almost expired. And then they were paired with Yvette Lee Bowser, who had this idea for these 4 women living in Brooklyn. And there was nothing particularly notable about it. And that's, I think, why the show was so resonant. It really was. You just follow these 4 women and their 2 male friends as they sort of navigate life and love and what it means to be young and professional women in Brooklyn. And you mentioned Friends. The Living Single really is the blueprint for the ensemble comedy that Friends later became. And it's people connected to both shows who happen to tell me that. But what you see, and this is certainly true of the 90s and before, what you see is producers who have experience on one show in a writer's room of one show getting their shot to launch their own show. And that was the case with Living Single. And so by the time Yvette Lee Bowser had that opportunity, she knew how to run a writer's room. She knew how to navigate around all of the many corners that pop up when you're trying to get a show like that on the air. And of course, Queen Latifah was the star by then, as was Kim Coles, who was previously on In Living Color.
Well, I'm wondering, with all of the interviews, you've done so many interviews for this book, what sense did they have of the responsibility they had once they found that this widespread success was happening and this was all sort of somewhat new ground?
It's funny, almost to a number, they were aware of the success their respective shows were having. They didn't fully understand the cultural impact for a number of reasons. One, now you sort of get that immediate feedback in terms of, whether it's on social media or even in the ratings. You get a sense of when a show is landing and when it's really culturally important. Back then, it took time. Kim Parsons told me, who played Hilary Banks on Fresh Prince, she told me she didn't realize the show was really doing well until she happened to be in a supermarket and picked up the TV Guide and then turned to the back of it and saw that the show was, a top-rated show, because in her mind, The Cosby Show, that was the show. And so, at the time, if you're going to be a sort of a family-centered Black sitcom, it was really all about The Cosby Show. And she didn't realize that her show was a hit until, I think, the end of the first season. And the other thing is that most of them were in their late 20s, early 30s, so they were fairly young. And the number one priority was making sure those shows stayed on the air. So, Martin Lawrence and Will Smith headlining his show, they really were focused primarily on making sure that week after week they were putting funny content into the world. They weren't so focused on having shows that were socially conscious. Of course, A Different World had a heart to it. That show did have sort of a socially conscious focus. That was certainly true of seasons 2 and beyond. But for the most part, they were really just focused on having shows that were funny and engaging and really abiding by the business of show business. That was also one of the takeaways when they looked at some of the comics who came before them. Folks who were really funny, but who...
We just seem to have lost Geoff
whose
Bennett.
career suffered as a result. So, those shows of the 90s that I talk about in this book, Black Out Loud, what you have are folks who are, firing on all cylinders here in terms of the creative output, but they also really understood how to navigate the business of Hollywood. So that was important too.
I want to go back to where we started this conversation, where you start the book, which is looking at the early part of the 20th century and what it was for you to reconcile what Black entertainment was at the early part of the 20th century through what it blossomed into, and what it was to understand that history and everything that was stacked against those early comedians and writers and performers.
Yeah, what I discovered was you can't understand American comedy without grappling with minstrelsy. It is the country's first mass entertainment form. And yes, it's built on distortion. It's built on degrading images and depictions of Black folks. Minstrelsy is where I think American comedy learned its worst instincts. You've got exaggeration, caricature. It's profit really built on someone else's humanity. And what's complicated and important is that Black performers eventually entered minstrelsy too, often forced into it. And then some of them quietly subverted it from within. And the thing that is important, and I do this with the book, is I don't try to judge any of that prior work by a modern standard. I try to apply a lens that works for the time frame, because for many Black artists, actually for all the Black artists of that day, minstrelsy wasn't a choice. It was the only stage available. And the question became, how do you survive it? How do you reshape it? And so there's a long tradition of Black performers trying to smuggle truth, as I call it, into spaces that were not built for them. And minstrelsy is one of the earliest examples.
I have to say, I was really struck with your chapter of Hattie McDaniel and what she did that I think a lot of us still don't understand, that you surface. But in just the moment we have left, I want to ask about what it was for you to go back and revisit these shows as a journalist, as an adult, these shows that had mesmerized you as a child, and what that experience was and how they held up.
It's funny because I was watching them with my son, who's 13, 14 years old. He's a little older than I was when I started watching these shows. And to the question of how do they hold up really well. A Different World is actually now being rebooted. They're shooting it in the Atlanta University Center. And the real joy of this book was getting to speak to so many of the original cast members, Darryl Bell, Sinbad, some other folks, and getting to tell them how important their work was. Of course, now they all know that. I mean, you could look at the numbers of HBCU applications that rose as a result of A Different World. There's an entire lane of academic research connected to the Maxine Shaw effect. Maxine Shaw was the attorney on Living Single, and the numbers of Black women who entered professions, high-powered professions, in large part because they were able to see in their mind's eye what that would be like, because Maxine Shaw did that first. So these shows are culturally important. There had never been a book that looked at the entirety of these sitcoms and what they did on a cultural level. And so that really is what I sought to do with this book. I wanted to write the book I've always wanted to read. And it really has been a joy getting to talk to the performers and the producers connected to it. And then thinking about how so many of us who grew up with them, how we were changed, really. Changed by those shows, and how new generations are encountering them now. So this book, Black Out Loud, my first book, writing a book, as you well know, it is more than a notion. It's a lot of work. This was a 4-year-long process, but it has been a real joy to put it into the world.
Well, I am so envious that you've done it. My book is still just inside me. That's why we're not talking about it. It'll come out at some point. Geoff Bennett, congratulations on the book. You can tell that it was 4 years of work. It's fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jared.
Geoff Bennett is the co-anchor and co-managing editor of PBS NewsHour. His new book is Black Out Loud, The Revolutionary History of Black Comedy from Vaudeville to 90s Sitcoms. Well, coming up, we'll meet the woman at the center of the legal fight to stop construction of President Trump's much ballyhooed ballroom. She's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Make getting ready for the day the most productive part of your day.
From the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Mark Hurst.
Get the local news you need to know. Traffic and transit updates. And weather with meteorologist Dave Epstein.
The gusty wind in the afternoon, partly cloudy.
When you're getting ready, get ready with us.
Time to round up the week with our incisive politics reporter, Adam Riley.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Umbrella Arts Center in Concord, Massachusetts, presenting the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Hairspray, April 24th through May 17th. Tickets at theumbrellaarts.org. And the Museum of Fine Arts, presenting Framing Nature, Gardens, and Imagination. This new exhibition of beloved and never-before-seen treasures centers gardens across time, place, and cultures. More at mfa.org. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. UMass, the state's flagship public research university, empowers students to be the future in the pursuit of progress for Massachusetts and beyond. More at umass.edu.
Experience a fusion of Puerto Rican jazz rhythms live at GBH on April 30th. Listen to the Emmy-nominated cuatrista Fabiola Mendez. Tickets at gbh.org/events.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. The East Wing of the White House lived several lives. Theodore Roosevelt built it in 1902 as an entrance for visitors and guests. Franklin Roosevelt expanded it during World War II. And in 1977, Rosalind Carter moved her office there, becoming the first presidential spouse to work from the East Wing and establishing it as the modern home of the First Lady and her staff. That building is now gone, demolished as part of President Trump's plan for a new White House ballroom. Its destruction has sparked a legal fight over history, preservation, and presidential power. At the center of that fight is Alison Hoagland, a board member of the National Trust for Historic Preservation and an architectural historian who helped support the case. So a quick history. The National Trust brought a lawsuit to halt the ballroom construction in December after the East Wing was razed. Since then, the lawsuit has become a White House courtroom drama. In late March, a federal judge halted the ballroom project, saying it could not proceed without congressional approval. The Trump administration then argued national security concerns meant the whole project should keep moving. The judge called that reading of his order, quote, brazen and disingenuous, and said only below-ground security work could continue. The president appealed again, and now the D.C. Circuit has temporarily allowed construction to move forward while the case continues. Alison Hoagland, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Well, let's just jump in on everything that I just said. Even for those of us trying to follow this in the news, there's a lot of back and forth. For our audience who can't see you, you're smiling right now. You understand this well. How much did I get this right, and where does it stand right now?
You got it all right. It's now waiting for a hearing at the appeals court, which has been scheduled for early June.
So tell me, we'll go back into the next steps, but how did you come into this process with your affiliation, but also you being one of the figureheads behind this?
I play a very small role here. I'm for a nonprofit organization to get standing in a legal case. They need at least one member who can stand up and say this affects me personally. So I'm that person, but I'm one of thousands who could have done this. And in fact, I think the White House affects every American personally, and we should take this very seriously.
Well, and I know that because you live in Washington, D.C., you do see this theoretically on a daily basis. So how does it affect you? How did it affect you, for instance, when you woke up that morning, as we all did, and saw that the East Wing was being demolished?
Yeah, the White House is such a potent symbol of our government. To have it be changed without the public knowing, without any public input, is really distressing. We all relate to the White House. It shows up on the TV news every night. You may not see it in person, but you see it every day on the news. And to have it go through changes that haven't been vetted, that haven't been gone through the proper channels, that haven't gone through the legal channels, takes away something from all of us.
In addition to just the visuals of seeing the destruction, how have you seen this as a breach of power?
Very much so. For changes of this magnitude to a very important historic building in our country, the changes should go through several reviews. And there are two panels that they initially, or actually demolished the East Wing before they went through any of these reviews. And also for a project like this, the approval of Congress is also necessary. Usually Congress appropriates the funding, and that's where the approval comes from. But the president appears to be using private funding, so it didn't go through Congress. But they should still grant the authority to do this. Which is the question so many people have: is how is a place like the White House, the People's House, how does this proceed without any of that happening, and how does it continue to work? I know we have a judicial system where this is all reviewed, but how does this proceed when, in some sense, it seems so black and white? Change the building, congressional approval. Right. That's our position. He just keeps on doing it. And right now, it's very hard to see into the site. We really don't know what's going on there. Although his lawyers have told the judge that nothing is being built above ground and won't be built above ground until this process is complete. Well, so they're building underground. They're digging underground. And again, to explain that, there is this argument, which we don't know a lot about, but there is military action essentially happening below ground in terms of security and a bunker. How do you proceed with a lawsuit when, because it's classified, because it's considered national security information, it's hard to move forward knowing what is being argued? It makes it difficult, and of course it makes us all very suspicious. But a classified case could, the judge could look at could get read into the classified documents and be able to see what's going on. I think there are ways around that. The interesting thing is that, so we know there was a bunker there, like Franklin Roosevelt built some sort of bunker during World War II under the East Wing. So there's always been some security component there. But the importance of this security facility has ballooned ever the more that the president gets denied in court, the larger the security implications of this have become. So now that becomes his primary argument, whereas before it was just a minor piece of the whole construction. Well, before I ask you about the proposed ballroom and whatever will now take its place in that vacant lot, essentially next to the White House main residence, how would you describe what the East Wing had represented to you and what it should represent to, what it should have represented to the Americans in terms of its history and place in our history? The East Wing was a very secondary compatible structure that had obvious functional needs, like the first lady's office, the security, whatever. And it was designed to read as it was called a colonnade, as just a sort of a small decorative element into which they were able to pack a lot of stuff. The functions changed over time, as happens in all houses and so forth. But it was a part of the White House that augmented the White House itself, kept the White House as a primary building, and in some ways enhanced it. The same can't be said of what's to come. And what was lost, I think we still don't have a full measure of what was lost in the destruction. We know that, yes, it was a more recent part of the history, but there were also historical components to that. Is there a sense of what was saved, what was at risk, and what might be lost forever? Yeah, they said they've saved some stone, I think maybe the columns, and so some physical parts of the building, but they haven't outlined any plans to reuse them in the new structure. So I don't know what they plan to do with them. And again, the whole thing is pretty much the opposite of transparent. We really have no idea what's going on with that, with the what maybe should have been saved.
And as you and the National Trust for Historic Preservation have brought this case forward, how have you looked at prior changes to the White House? Of course, it hasn't always looked like this. As you just said, too, buildings evolve. We all know this. How does that give a sense of what is allowable and what the process should be going forward?
Yes, the White House has been changed over time, many times, and the other worse things have been suggested and not built too. We have to remember that. But the
like what? I don't think we've heard so much about that.
Yeah, well, there were some plans for 1902 with McKee-Mead-White expansion that were just ginormous. But the good rule is now that we have a whole federal preservation system in place, is that it goes through review. We go through these things carefully. People look at it, they express their opinions. The public gets to weigh in, experts get to weigh in, and it happens carefully. So the changes that have been made, some were controversial at the time, but they were for the most part done with a great deal of care and sensitivity.
Well, now it seems that there's a stress test for those systems because there are review boards. There's the Art Commission, the Planning Commission. Those are populated with Trump appointees at this point. So does the system hold? We know how it didn't hold for the destruction, but can it hold going forward?
We would certainly hope so. Generally, the architects who have taken projects through these review processes, while they find them annoying, architects like to do what they like to do, they generally concede that the project is better at the end. That if you have real committed professionals on these boards, they can help a project. They can make it better. Usually what happens is the architect brings the project back several times, makes changes, comes back, makes changes, comes back. It keeps getting better and better. And then that is not what is happening here. And in fact, the Fine Arts Commission approved the whole thing with only conceptual drawings. And the Planning Commission, National Capital Planning Commission, didn't do much better. So they're also ruling on very sketchy designs.
I'm speaking with Alison Hoagland, who is a professor emerita of historic preservation at Michigan Technological University and a board member of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She is the person identified, the individual identified with this lawsuit going forward. How will this go forward at this point? What are your expectations, given that winding path that I laid out at the beginning of this conversation?
The next step is the hearing before the appeals court in early June. And what we would expect is that they would recognize that, yes, the president does have to go take this to Congress, and he would need Congress's approval. And that is, again, a way for the people to have a voice in this, right? Everyone, except those of us who live in DC, have a congressperson that they can go to and weigh in. And we would hope, of course, that it would be denied.
And how far will you weigh in? In other words, do you want to have a say in what takes place, what takes shape, and what the use is of whatever structure will be there going forward?
Our role is to just react to what's proposed. We can't say you must do this, but personally, I think that it's possible to build a ballroom. It can be done well. It can be made much less visible. We're not saying, you can't do what you want. It's just how you're doing it that is the real problem.
For people who aren't as steeped in architecture and planning, you don't even necessarily have to be in a city like Washington, D.C., where you get a sense pretty quickly of how everything has been very deliberately laid out. A little history lesson there, if you would, just in terms of the planning of Washington, D.C. and why scale does matter so much.
Sure. So Washington, D.C. was a planned city in 1790 when they decided to establish the Capitol on the banks of the Potomac. And L'Enfant, the designer who laid it out, used the hilltops to advantage. So on the biggest hill is the Capitol, what was called Congress House at the time. And it's a very large building and was always meant to be. And then on another hill, about a mile and a half away, is what he called the President's House. which was secondary in nature, which was a house, not a palace. There was actually some debate about this at the time. And just as the whole new government was trying to figure out what is the president, what is his role, they designed a deliberately modest house. Now it's bigger than any house you or I've ever lived in, and it does serve as an office as well as his home office. But it's nothing compared to what other governments might have in terms of where they would locate their head of state.
And even the style of the White House was very deliberate. How so?
Yes, it's a wonderful neoclassical building. It's very measured, restrained. It has classical ornament. It depends on symmetry and hierarchy, and it just speaks with such dignity, right? And it's very remarkable in its wonderful completeness as a design.
And restraint being key, I imagine, akin to how George Washington, before, of course, the White House was built, described his role, that he was not a king, that he was more of a person serving the people.
Exactly. He decided not to wear any regalia. He didn't want to dress like a king. He didn't want to be called Your Excellency or whatever. I mean, he very much was trying to define the presidency as a modest role.
Now, of course, we're watching what's happening with the ballroom and wondering what will happen. And I know your lawsuit does not pertain to these other two projects, but I'd love your insight as we consider what is going to happen to the Kennedy Center and the proposed arch that the president has talked about, which is its scale matches that of the ballroom in that it is really large.
Yes, good point. So for the Kennedy Center, the president said, I think last fall, that he wants to take it down to its steel frame and redesign it. I mean, we've seen no other design since then. And given that he tends to do things before he actually has permission, a coalition of 8 preservation groups have already filed suit to try to again, require that he go through the proper review processes. And so that's now waiting on legal action. The arch is also very distressing. This is a proposal for a triumphal arch at the foot of Arlington Cemetery. Already you see the contradiction there between a memorial landscape and a triumphal arch. At the foot of a bridge called Memorial Bridge that leads to the Lincoln Memorial. And so the bridge intended to put Lincoln's memorial in dialogue with the ancestral home of Robert E. Lee. And the idea was the bridge was going to be the symbol of reconciliation between North and South. The arch that is proposed looks something like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, except that it has a 66-foot, I think, golden statue, Lady Liberty on top, and it's 250 feet high. So think 25-story building. DC has a height limit for most of its buildings at 10 stories. And the Lincoln Memorial itself is only 100 feet. So this would just dominate everything that it's supposed to be respecting. So there is a lawsuit involved in that, and I'm not quite sure. I think they're also waiting for court dates there.
I'm wondering, you just mentioned steel, and one of the most recent things I read about the ballroom, steel in regard to taking the Kennedy Center down to its steel structure, is that the steel for the ballroom would be donated by not an American company, significantly, but like much of the rest of the proposed ballroom, the funding is already there. It's by outside donors. Does that factor into your own lawsuit that we're talking about a very public building that theoretically would be built with private funds?
Very much so, because we argue that you cannot bypass the public process by funding it outside. And then that's just what he's trying to do. And that's why we're insisting that he go through Congress as if Congress had funded it. You can't just raise your own money to go around the law. It's outrageous, really.
Well, I normally don't ask this question, but I think I will in this case. Do you have a sense of how this is all going to turn out as it works its way through the legal system?
I don't. And in fact, you raised the issue in your introduction about it's about presidential power, right? It's one more case that tests the limits of presidential power. And I just don't know how that's gonna play out. But it's again a reason to be concerned about this project. It's just one more symbol of, I think, presidential overreach.
Well, Alison Hoagland, thank you so much for your time today, for your insight, and for keeping an eye on checking power in this instance. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Alison Hoagland is Professor Emerita of Historic Preservation at Michigan Technical University and a board member of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. She is at the center as an individual of the National Trust lawsuit challenging President Trump's White House ballroom project. Again, thank you. Coming up, for 40 years, the MIT List Visual Arts Center has pushed contemporary art into the middle of MIT's culture of innovation. Director Paul Ha joins us as the List celebrates that legacy. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Films from Brazil have been making waves at the Oscars in recent years. That has Brazilians thinking more about who gets to make movies.
Brazilian cinema has been dominated by mainly white men since the beginning of Brazilian modern history. There's still a lot of stories to be told from different angles.
That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Music Worcester, presenting the world premiere of Frederick, a cantata on the life of Frederick Douglass, a musical portrait paying tribute to the life of this American icon, April 25th at historic Mechanics Hall. More at musicworcester.org.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Newport Mansions.
11 historic properties and landscapes, 7 of which are designated National Historic Landmarks.
Kevin O'Leary, Director of Marketing.
Whenever I'm coming across visitors, I always ask them, how did you get here? Did you hear about us? And many, many times people say, I heard it on GBH. It was a great reminder. We planned to go, we heard it on GBH, and now we're here.
To learn how GBH can benefit your business, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
Wherever you are, you can stream GBH 89.7 on the GBH News app. From your kitchen to your commute, stay connected with expert interviews and trusted local news. Download the GBH News app today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. For 40 years, MIT List Visual Arts Center has argued that art has a vital role in the middle of a place built for science, engineering, and big ideas. It has also shaped MIT's sprawling campus with public works of art by artists like Alexander Calder, Louise Nevelson, and Saul LeWitt, while also filling its galleries with exhibitions that wrestle with technology, labor, and the future itself. Now, as the List celebrates its 40th anniversary, the museum is celebrating with exhibitions, performances, and a look back at its own history. Joining me now is Paul Ha, who is celebrating his own anniversary, 15 years leading the List and helping to shape the institution's next chapter. He joins us to talk about it all. Paul Ha, welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to see you.
It's great to be here, Jared.
Well, for people who haven't been on that campus, well, leaving the public art aside, which I highly suggest just wandering, it's fabulous. But how do you describe what the List Center is and what people can experience?
So the List Visual Arts Center is the contemporary art museum at MIT, and we do several things for MIT. One is to do ever-changing exhibitions, and we've always focused on the cutting edge, the untested. We also oversee the art collection and the MIT's collection, and we don't have a permanent gallery, unlike the MFA or ICA, but our art is all throughout the campus. So if you go into the offices of professors, if you go to student housing, if you go into the president's house, you'll see our collection there. And then of course, we oversee the public art, and we have the very unusual Percent for Art program where whenever there's a new building being built, a new committee gets formed, and then we pick an artist and a new piece for that building. And we have currently about 70 major pieces of public art on campus, and it's in the MIT's mandate. So if you can imagine I know your last program was about Centennial. 100 years from now, how many more art there will be on campus? It's kind of unimaginable.
Which is so interesting because presumably the art that's chosen reflects the moment, the tone, atmosphere. So it's an artistic record of the time.
Yeah, that's so perceptive, Jared. And not only the art, but if you walk around the campus, you see the different architecture. And, most people don't know this, but MIT was one of the first university college in the United States to give a degree in architecture. So as you walk around, you'll see a Frank Gehry, you'll see a Alvar Aalto. And so those two, as you walk around, you can sort of try to guess which decade that building was built.
It hasn't always been the case that science and art are entwined. We talk about STEM versus STEAM just more loudly in the last few decades. But what has been in the MIT culture to always recognize the value of culture among scientific thinkers?
So, as with anything, it comes to a couple of people. And MIT was very fortunate to have Jerry Wiesner as the president. And he was one of those very sciencey guys, but he was also very cultured. He was on Kennedy's team for the culture when he was president. And he thought, creativity begets creativity. And it being a university, they created a task force, and they wanted to think about how to place art on campus. And Calder was the first one. And somebody on the committee knew Alexander Calder, who then, this was around 1963, was a contemporary artist. They went down to his studio in Connecticut, chose a small maquette, brought it on campus, and then they cut the ribbon in 65. And then around 1973, I.M. Pei building was being built, and they already had decided they wanted the Percent for Art program, and he chose his friend Louise Nevelson. And from then on, things just took off.
And one of the great things about MIT people may not realize is so much of course, the public art is very accessible, but so is the list in terms of free admission.
Yeah, so we've always been free since 1985. Our tagline is free and open to all since 85. And, I think one of the great things that people don't realize is we have an unbelievable free, open to the public sculpture park in Boston and Cambridge, which is the MIT campus. And we like to think of the entire campus as a museum. So as you stroll through, you can see all these great art and architecture. And we discovered, especially during the pandemic, how much people were using it. And we needed to get out there in the open air with the fresh air. And so, working with Bloomberg Philanthropies, we developed an app where you could create tours for yourself, whether it's the West Campus, East Campus, indoors, outdoors. And that's being utilized quite a bit.
How is it for you as a museum director to be able to act and think and move art forward so holistically that it's not simply within a building, that it's this wonderful web throughout the MIT community?
Well, it takes great people, and I work with the best people. Our curators are world class, our registrars, administrators, and then we work closely with MIT's facilities, and those folks are incredible about thinking about the entire campus as an art project in a way.
So how are you taking, well, I guess I'll ask you personally, and then for the List Visual Arts Center at 40 years, but what do these anniversaries mean to you, the milestones, your own and the List's?
Anniversaries, I look at them and think about those who came before us. So all the past directors, all the artists that we've gone through the museum, all the workers, and we worked very hard on this new website for our 40th. And if you go through it, you realize how many people has gone through as an artist, as administrators, as directors, as curators, and how many people it takes to create history. And after the anniversary, you have the future to think about. And I think MIT is one of those great places where it's always about the future. And a lot of people are surprised when they find out that MIT has a contemporary art museum, but it makes perfect sense if you realize that we're a laboratory for art, and we, float up the trial balloon of art and saying, is this piece significant? Will it go into the ICA exhibition 10 years later? Will it end up at the MFA 20 years later? And so once they realize that, they think, of course, MIT should have a contemporary art museum.
You have always been heralded for the way you champion artists and for the way you recognize artists, especially early on in their career, people who have gone on to become very blue chip artists. What do you look for when you are trying to identify an artist who is so deserving of a platform, such as a gallery show or a museum show, in their career?
It takes a lot of people to think about the future, and I rely on great colleagues and great eyes and great minds, and to discuss, is this something that's worthy of exhibiting? Not to say we think this is great, but to say this is what's happening right now. This needs exposure. We need to support this. We need to produce this, and then conversation follows. So most of our artists, they don't have big monographs. They don't, classes aren't taught about them. But hopefully down the road, 10, 20, 30, 100 years from now, people will still be talking about them.
Well, that's really interesting, because I think that so many people go in and think, okay, I'm expected to think a certain way, to interpret a certain way, to come to a certain conclusion, but everything you've just said is no. This is all up for debate right now.
Yeah, I think the art that's most interesting to me is something that I don't quite understand at the time, but I constantly keep thinking about it, and I constantly keep wanting to ask my colleagues, have you gone to that studio? What do you think of that piece? And then to be able to support that artist and to present it. We're here to support artists, and without artists, there is no art. There's no reason for a museum to exist without art. So every object that you see in a museum, someone created that.
How would you describe the importance of artists in this time? And by this time, I'm talking about what's happening politically, what we're seeing happening on streets, what we're seeing happening with arts funding.
It's not just this time. Throughout history, artists has always been the voice. They've always been the one who is telling the story of what's going on right now, and to leave a legacy for the future generation to learn about. And so right now there's so much going on, as you know, and it's not just one voice, but there's many voices, and a lot of them are very important.
I'm speaking with Paul Ha, the director of MIT List Visual Arts Center. We're talking about his 15th anniversary, the List's 40th anniversary. I also want to ask you about performing conditions. I think this speaks to what you've just been talking about, how artists are interrogating our society and our times. This is a new exhibition that's just opened. What will we find there?
So, most of us think about money and our relation to it, but artists in particular have always thought a lot about money, mostly because when you're starting out, you don't have any. And so this exhibition, artists are thinking about the relationship between their art making, the labor, what they had to do to make the money to make the art, and also a lot of the conversations about debt. A lot of, once you go through college, graduate school, you're in a lot of debt. If you come out of a medical school, usually you can rely on that field to pay for your debt. Many artists do not have the means to do that. So it's a very interesting show. It's a very current show, and it's not one voice either. There's lots of point of views. So I think everyone should come and check it out.
I want to talk about something that I've always thought was really confounding to me, and how this can exist with the respect that it has, and that is the art student loan program, where, as I understand it, students have access to some of the incredible work in the MIT collection that then hangs in their dorms. How much of this do I have right?
You have everything right. And once again, it comes down to a couple of people who has great idea and who's their generosity, and then it continues. And so Kay Stratton, who was one of the president's wives, she had some Picasso and Miro prints. And she thought, wouldn't it be great if the students can live with these and have the experience of living with art and looking at it every day? So we began that program around 1973, and then we started collecting specifically for that program. And we have around 600 to 800 pieces, and pieces that you will see at the MFA and the ICA. And now with the internet, students realize what they have. In the past, that you didn't know what you had, but once they get the piece, they'll email and say, "Do you know what I have? Do you know how much this is worth?" But we believe fully that artists and our students should be together. That our students deserve to live with real art, that they can appreciate, that they can go to museums and see other examples of that artist's pieces, and hopefully it'll bring joy, and maybe down the road they'll become collectors or donors to museums or to public radio and other things.
Well, it's funny because I think so many of us may default to some of our experiences in college and what happens in college dorm rooms, especially on a Friday or Saturday night, but that's not much of an issue, as you've found over the years with the program.
We've never had anything go awry. We've had some maybe things fall off its hinges or some whatnot, but I mean, the students do sign a contract, and if something terribly goes wrong, you do not get your MIT degree.
Yeah. That's a pretty good stipulation. Well, what do you find as you watch this program unfold, the way students select the art, the way the care has developed over the years with which they now take this art into their own hands and know that they can be looking at something in their bathrobe that ordinarily they might have to be in a museum to see?
I mean, it's changed so much and so fast because when the program started, there wasn't the internet. Right, in the early 70s. And now students come by, take notes, take photographs, they do research. And what's really fun for us is that a lot of times, and it's many of them, the student will pick the same piece the 4 years that they're here.
Wow.
They love it, they fall in love with it, and then they stand in line, they try to get it, It's really, the stories are great. We've started capturing them and put them on Instagram, and it's really a joy to give these to the students.
Well, what do you want to leave us with today? Again, hearkening back to the 40th anniversary, and you talk so much about the future, too, thinking about this moment as it will be remembered in the future. What are you saying about the list right now?
I think what's most important for this audience that's listening is to let you know that the MIT campus, our galleries, the art collection, it's not just for the MIT folks, but it's for everyone. So if you want to take time out and see some beautiful architecture and art, just stroll on the campus, look at the app and create a tour for yourself and just enjoy the art. And if you love art or want to learn about visual art, if you go to any city, you have something to do. There's always a museum, there's always a gallery, and if you're lucky enough to go see a private collection. And so once you develop this hobby, and it's been a passion of mine, you can always have great things to see in every city.
And it's very easy to do as your training ground when it's free. Can't underscore that enough, so that there are no expectations. You don't have to run around, exhaust yourself seeing everything. You can see one piece because it's free. You're not wasting anything. I've always loved that experience from when I was a student. Paul Ha, thank you so much for being here today, and congratulations on all the anniversaries.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Paul Ha is director of MIT List Visual Arts Center. The List's 40th anniversary celebration includes its anniversary timeline, the exhibition we just spoke of, performing conditions, and upcoming public programs listed on the center's calendar, including screenings, talks, and other events this spring. For the latest anniversary programming, head to the MIT List Visual Arts Center website. The museum, as we mentioned, is always free. Thank you for joining us for another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library. This month's Wednesday watch party is happening. We'll be revisiting When Harry Met Sally, taking your calls, asking if the 1989 rom-com still holds up. Remember, no reservations required to join our live studio audience. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Mers. Our engineer today is Bill Piacitelli. Patrick Lally produced today's YouTube live stream. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Cape Cod Foundation, committed to building resources to support community life on Cape Cod, including environmental conservation, arts and culture, and community development. Learn more at capecodfoundation.org. Actors Ted Danson, Mary Steenburgen, and William H. Macy trace their nonconformist ancestors back to the Puritan establishment. Don't miss Finding Your Roots, tonight at 8 on GBH2.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, thousands of Harvard graduate students are on strike as contract negotiations stall. Inside President Trump's cabinet upheaval with another member stepping down. And after 240 years, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette was set to close until a nonprofit focused on local news stepped in. That's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Breaking a long-standing taboo, Japan is now allowed to sell weapons to Europe.
Japan does have a long-standing security cooperative relationship with all these different countries that are really facing pressure from Russia.
I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. We'll take you to Beirut's waterfront, where thousands who have fled fighting in southern Lebanon are stuck camping out.
They're not feeling secure.